This video is sponsored by Normandy 1998, Christopher Mitchell, 212th Trooper, Sylar 1610, Carmen CJ, Rune Scribble, Legendary Ray Ray, Ash, and Devin Dixon. Our story begins where Primeape's canonical story ended, during the climax of the Punchy Pokemon. Following an intense bout with Hitmonlee, Ash and Primeape have at last proven themselves to be the very best like no one ever was, at least in this specific competition, and as their eyes meet, the pair feel immense fondness for each other, as well as a burning desire to keep working together to rise higher and higher. Like in canon, it is at this point that Anthony approaches Ash and offers to train Primeape into a true P1 champion, a strange request considering it is already a P1 champion, and the Pokemon Anthony has trained has never actually won the Grand Prix, despite him deserting his family to devote everything he has to training it, with this being the central conflict of the episode. But putting that aside, here Ash does something he did not do in canon, and asks Primeape what it wants. Looking its trainer in the eye, the pig monkey reflects on how far they've come today, both in terms of achievement and their bond, and recognizing that no amount of specialized training is worth giving that up, it snuffles once and shakes its head. Shrugging that he gotta respect a fighter's loyalty, Anthony wishes Ash and Primeape all the best on their travels. Then, as he starts heading home with his daughter for a long overdue reunion, Ash and his friends press onwards towards their next destination, and more adventure. Unfortunately, Primeape's adventure will not begin for a while, as there isn't much for it to do over the next few episodes, either due to lack of battles, or because in the instances where there are battles, Ash is more likely to bring out the Pokemon he did in canon, such as Squirtle to face off against the Diglett infestation. Additionally, Ash has not yet tumbled to the idea of actually training his Pokemon, meaning Primeape is left to stagnate somewhat, a fact which annoys the piggish pugilist to no end, as even if it has come to respect Ash as its friend and trainer, it still has the wild impulse to fight and grow stronger by proving itself against others. Fortunately, such an opportunity will present itself, though not in the manner anyone expected, as the rival who will test it more than any other turns out to be Ash's newly evolved Charmeleon. Since evolving, the fire lizard has developed a bad attitude, being disrespectful and disobedient towards Ash, having deemed him not worth listening to. While the boy is naturally dispirited by this, he's not going to give up on his friend, and better still, he has something he didn't have in the main timeline. Primeape has proof that even if a Pokemon doesn't respect him now, that doesn't mean they can't be won over with hard work and trust. To this end, when the gang stop for meals or to make camp, Ash does his best to pair Charmeleon and Primeape up, hoping maybe the fighting type can share its reasons for coming around to Ash, so that Charmeleon can return to him as well. Unfortunately, rather than mending bridges, this tactic instead burns them, as having become incredibly loyal to Ash after he saved it from injury when it was tossed out of the ring in the P1 Grand Prix, Primeape doesn't like the lizard's snide comments about their trainer being too weak to care about, as while it gets wanting to be stronger, it also knows the only way to do this is with the help of friends. This stands in direct contrast to Charmeleon's ideology that strength is the only thing that matters, and that can only be gained through the solitary pursuit of power, and by dominating strong foes. Despite not being the fire type in this relationship, this causes Primeape to flare up, as it orders Charmeleon to put its money where its mouth is and fight it then. Though yawning and waving a claw dismissively, the flame Pokemon growls that the pig monkey isn't worth the effort. It, which is to say Charmeleon, already beat the fighting type when they first met, and that was when it was just a puny little Charmander, so now that it's Charmeleon, they're not even in the same league. Naturally, this incenses the fighting type who attempts to rush its rival, though having the benefit of a long-range flamethrower which is capable of halting an entire army of Executor, Primeape sadly doesn't even get close before it is sent crashing to the ground as a ball of charred fur, while the fire type coldly asserts that this is what it meant. Primeape is weak. Weak. Weak! This word rings in the pig monkey's ears long after Charmeleon has left, lighting a fire out hotter than the embers that still smolder on the ends of its fur. It will show that brat who is weak, and it will do so never stooping to its selfish level. To this end, Primeape begins its own training, even if it's just honing its fists by punching trees and rocks, or else simulating sitting under a waterfall by having Squirtle blasted from above with its strongest water gun. Not only that, but it also begins investing more time in its teammates as well as any friends they meet along the way, with this being most obvious when they reach Moss Green Village and meet a girl named Cassandra who needs help evolving her timid Paris. Figuring it just needs some battle experience, Ash agrees to throw a series of practice matches with Pikachu and Primeape being his go-to Pokemon for this task. Unfortunately, even Pikachu's weakest Thundershock puts spirals in the bug grass type's eyes, though thankfully, Primeape is here to help, and by help, it means toughen the little orange coward up through much screaming and intimidating glaring, as while it has developed loyalty, it is still the same berserker ape it ever was. Surprisingly, Paris actually responds well to Crisis, as when its fight or flight instincts kick in, it fights, ramming a claw painfully into Primeape's belly and incapacitating it. This genuine victory against such a seemingly terrifying opponent does wonders for Paris' self-confidence, so that in an instant, it is consumed in white light and becomes the Parasect its trainer needs. From the ground, Primeape looks on proudly, as this is just further proof that its ideology is correct. Strength is gained through teamwork, and that idiot lizard doesn't know what it's talking about. However, this celebration may be premature, as not long after this, Charmeleon does achieve a new level of strength all on its own, as its ego drives it to evolve into a Charizard so that it can crush an Aerodactyl in Grandpa Canyon. This new leap in power, not to mention the super effective flying typing that comes with it, only widens the gap in power between itself and Primeape, a fact the pugilist is quite aware of, even as it challenges Charizard to battle once again. And once again, it loses, as it is blasted with Flamethrower, this time from above, as Charizard takes flight beyond its reach and what is surely meant as an insult to add to injury. Nonetheless, Primeape does not stop, with a few of the gang's other more proactive team members like Bulbasaur and Geodude joining in for occasional spars, with this helping them all to grow and also develop an unlikely friendship, as Bulbasaur and Geodude are both usually quite stoic while Primeape is an explosive personality, though all three are united by their fighting spirit and the value they place on loyalty. Due to this latter point, when Bulbasaur is abducted by Wild Bulbasaur so that it can undergo forced evolution at the Mysterious Garden, Primeape accompanies Pikachu in a vain attempt to rescue its friend, charging onwards even after Pikachu turns back to get Ash, and only stopping when it loses sight of the kidnappers. Nonetheless, it continues searching for as long as it is able, angrily punching down trees and screaming for Bulbasaur until Ash and his friends arrive and use the pollen trail to reach the garden. Seeing Bulbasaur being assaulted by the garden's leader, a despotic Venusaur, Primeape finds itself apoplectic with rage, though when it screeches out a challenge for the big ugly toad to come fight something closer to its own size, it is Bulbasaur who barks out a refusal, as this is a matter of personal pride, so while it is grateful for its friend's support, it also needs Primeape's trust that it can handle this. Seeing this is just further proof of the warrior spirit they share, the pig monkey acquiesces, bellowing support for Bulbasaur as it continues to resist evolution, and watching as it manifests its determination as a new move, Solar Beam, which it promptly uses to defeat the newly arrived and unwelcome Team Rocket and save the Mysterious Garden. This thankfully is enough to earn the respect of the other grass types, meaning Bulbasaur and its friends can leave in peace, though this does not mean the starter is free to rest on its laurels, as when the next opportunity for training arises, Primeape comes to it and requests that it teach it how to perform a solar beam like the one it used to take down Team Rocket's balloon, since a beam attack might just be what it needs to settle its rivalry with Charizard. As a fist fighter, manifesting energy attacks does not come naturally to Primeape, though this does not mean it does not try, watching what Bulbasaur does and trying to simulate it. Even Pikachu and Squirtle help out in this endeavour, with them demonstrating Thunderbolt and Water Gun respectively, though even still there is little progress. The best Primeape is able to achieve is briefly manifesting a small orb of energy between its mitten-like hands, which when fired hastily peters out. However, trade is not the only thing Primeape has to concern itself with, as at long last Ash plans to use it in a gym battle, bringing it out as his third Pokemon against Blaine. For the most part, this battle has gone the same as canon up until this point, with Squirtle losing to Ninetales, prompting Ash to bring in Charizard, and Blaine to swap to Rhydon. However, Charizard had refused to fight the ground rock type, instead flying away and forcing Ash to call in the pig monkey Pokemon, as he trusts the fighting type's gutsy nature to carry him through this disadvantageous situation. Eager to prove itself, Primeape immediately goes on the attack with a fearsome Mega Kick, which despite being resisted forces the bipedal rhino to grunt with pain as it's pushed back, in a testament to Primeape's sheer strength. However, refusing to take this lying down, Rhydon then attempts to run Primeape through with a flurry of fury attacks, as it jabs at the pig monkey with its horn, forcing it to scamper backwards, while darting out with its paws to bat away the horn every time it gets close. Then, as the multi-strike move ends, Primeape lashes out with another Mega Kick, this time to the chin that sends its rocky foe reeling. Wanting to maintain this momentum, Ash next calls for a seismic toss, and demonstrating the move that won it the P1 Grand Prix, Primeape leaps up and grabs Rhydon by the horn before pulling it into the air with it. From the sidelines, Brock and Misty cheer for the pig monkey, while even Charizard deigns to look up from its nap in response to this climactic attack, showing its incredible physical prowess. Primeape lifts Rhydon, who weighs almost 4 times as much as it over its head, then tosses it down to the rocky battlefield, where it is rendered unconscious by the super effective move. Touching down, Primeape snorts menacingly, daring Blaine to bring on any Pokemon he has left, as it will crush them all, though when Blaine reveals his final choice to be none other than his Magmar, who emerges from the depths of the volcano itself, Charizard swoops back onto the field and attempts to shove the feisty Furball aside, as it wants to fight its fellow Fire type. Unfortunately for the Flame Pokemon, Primeape isn't budging, snarling that it gave up its shot when it flew away, so now it's just got to sit back and watch the fireworks, an answer Charizard plainly dislikes, as it attempts to barbecue its teammate with an errant flamethrower. Never want to simply take such an insult, especially not from its rival. Primeape responds to this with a sidekick to Charizard's corpulent belly that makes it bellow and ready its claws, since if that's the way it's going to be, it'll happily start its warm-up by beating the fighting type to a pulp. However, it seems this long overdue rematch is not to be, as figuring they can get their hands on 3 Primo Pokemon, Team Rocket decide to bust in earlier than in canon and begin laying down a volley of shots with their ice bazookas. Having been primed for battle, Primeape, Charizard, and Magmar are all able to avoid these shots, but the same cannot be said for the walls, which due to the impact of these blasts as well as the rapid cooling quickly begin to crumble, triggering an imminent eruption. Recognizing this will mean the end for them as well as the island if they don't stop this, Ash, Brock, Misty, Blaine, and all their Pokemon begin working together to fill the lava chasm with rocks, in the hope of creating a plug that might prevent the eruption. Even Charizard and Primeape are able to put their feud aside for the time being, since as Ash's 2 physically strongest Pokemon, it's up to them to do the lion's share of the rock carrying, often passing off to one another as part of a chain. Together, the team are able to avert calamity, with Ash being quick to thank both his heavy hitters and grin that he knew they could get along if they tried, though this just earns him a huff from both as they turn their backs on each other and cross their arms defiantly. Unfortunately, as part of sealing the breach, Blaine's battlefield was lost to the lava, meaning this final match against Magmar must be conducted on top of the volcano. As both are eager to fight, Charizard and Primeape stand on either side of their trainer as he ascends to the mountain's mouth. Then as Blaine questions Ash on which Pokemon he's going to use, he looks to Charizard and states that while he's grateful for its help, this match is Primeape's fair and square. Naturally, this earns the boy a blast of flamethrower to the face, but seemingly satisfied with his pay revenge, Charizard watches as Primeape leaps onto one of the small rocky spires that bridge the pit, while Magmar does the same without preamble. Taking the first move, Ash instructs Primeape to go on the offensive with a series of Mega Kicks, an order the Pigmonkey is happy to obey, that hops from spire to spire before ramming a foot into Magmar's gut. Nonetheless, the Fire Duck shows little reaction to this, its expression remaining vacant, as it retaliates with a fire punch that connects with Primeape's jaw, and leaves a char mark along the breadth of its face. Turning the pain of this into anger, the fighting type attempts to follow up with a second kick, though this is just what Blaine wants as he has Magmar lunge into the foot with a Skull Bash. At once, Primeape is sent completely off balance, and as it tumbles backwards and off its small foothold, is to reach out and grab the edge of its spire with one hand, to avoid becoming a pancake at the bottom of the now plugged up volcano. Seeing the helpless position its opponent is in, the Spitfire Pokemon that attempts to finish things off with a flamethrower. Though reacting before Ash can give a command, Primeape thrusts out its free hand and attempts to fire its imperfect blast attack at the flames. As with all previous attempts, this dissipates long before it can reach Magmar, though it does hold the flamethrower at bay just long enough that the fist fighter can draw on its simian instincts to swing from its pillar and onto another, and scramble back to its feet. Curiously, Misty asks Ash what that move was, though shrugging, the boy admits that he has no idea, though figuring Dextermite, he pulls out the device and points it at Primeape. Helpfully, the Pokédex explains that this is Hyper Beam, and grinning that the Pigmonkey is awesome for learning this new move, Ash tells it to do that again. Nodding fiercely, Primeape cups its 2 paws and brings them together with an orb of faint orange light forming between them. Then, as it cries out its name and thrusts its arms outwards, the orb becomes a beam that soars right at Magmar. Calmly, Blaine instructs his fire type to match this with Flamethrower, and unfortunately for Ash and Primeape, like last time, Hyper Beam cannot break through, forcing the fighting type to leap onto another platform, as it is engulfed in flame. Gritting his teeth now, the boy from Pallet Town instructs his friend to go back to Mega Kick, with this being something Primeape can do, as it jumps up high, then brings its large flat foot down on Magmar's face, sending it tumbling out of sight. However, this absence is short-lived, as before Ash and Primeape can celebrate, Magmar has reappeared, mimicking its foe and launching itself high into the air, though, unlike Primeape, it does not intend to use the drop to empower a physical move, instead manifesting a great flaming kanji, which it directs down at the Pigmonkey with a grunt. Worriedly, Brock announced that this is Fire Blast, one of the most powerful fire-type moves, and knowing nothing else in their arsenal can handle this, Ash calls for Hyper Beam. The risk of such a gambit is not lost on anyone, as Misty shields her eyes and Brock frowns, though curiously, Blaine asks what Ash's game is. However, smiling confidently, Ash replies that there's no game, he just has complete and total faith in his friend Primeape. On the battlefield, these words serve as a stimulant to the fighting type, as planting its feet, it begins channeling everything it has into the energy sphere in its hands. Its drive to be stronger, its passion for fighting, its loyalty for Ash, all roll together into a single ball. Then, without a sound, it fires. At once it is clear that this Hyper Beam is different, stronger, forming a larger blast and having a denser colour. This is the pure unfiltered power of Primeape, and as it strikes the Fire Blast, the massive flames are instantly extinguished, leaving nothing in its path, as it continues rising and consumes Magmar. Even before the burst of orange light fades, everyone knows the battle is over, and as Magmar collapses to the ground with spirals in its eyes, Ash leaps across the volcanic pillar to embrace Primeape, who slumps against him with a huff, having clearly been exhausted from this all-out attack. Nonetheless, Ash is incredibly proud of his fighting-type friend, telling it as much while Brock, Misty, and Pikachu all cheer their congratulations, and even Charizard gives the smallest of nods, in a gesture of begrudging respect. However, this does not mean the end of their rivalry. Far from it. as having accepted that Primeape is not a weakling after all, Charizard is more determined than ever to prove that its method of strength is superior. To this end, the very moment the heroes set up camp back on the mainland, Primeape and Charizard are squaring off for their rematch. Like last time, Charizard wastes no time in taking to the air, as this eliminates most of its opponent's options, though, having trained for this very scenario, Primeape readies a now mastered Hyper Beam. Spotting this, the Fire Dragon attempts to respond in kind with a ranged move of its own, that being its now signature Flamethrower, seeing it belch a torrent of flames down at the pig monkey as it fires its blast of orange light up at it. Unlike its previous battles with anyone since evolving, Charizard actually has to try here, putting everything it has into the attack just to hold Hyper Beam at bay, an utterly unacceptable resolution, but the only one it's gonna get, as neither it nor Primeape can break the stalemate, holding on until neither can maintain the move, and they are forced to disengage. Such strenuous attacking also drives Charizard into a landing so it can recover, a further indignity to stoke its ire, though, as it looks over at Primeape, it sees its rival sprawl down on its back also exhausted. At least it didn't collapse from the effort, which surely means that when push came to shove, it's still the strongest, right? Unfortunately, there isn't time for another rematch to find out, as by now the gang are headed for Viridian City in Ash's last gym battle, though to their surprise when they enter the gym they discover none other than Jessie, James and Meowth are the temporary gym leaders. To make matters worse, when Jessie and Ash make their way into the specialized trainer boxes, she reveals that she'll be using 3 Pokemon, none of which are her own, and all of which look to be incredibly powerful. Figuring the best way to fight power is with power, Ash calls for Primeape to come on out, and knowing this could be a problem, Jessie decides to fight dirty and have Marcham, Kingler and Rhydon all rush in at once. Fiercely, Primeape does its best to hold this barrage off, though even it can't handle a 3-on-1, and to make matters worse, when Ash's Pokemon is hurt, his trainer box electrocutes him to simulate the pain the pig monkey is feeling. Letting out a cry, Ash drops to one knee, though caring more for Primeape's well-being than his own, he puts all his focus into calling in some reinforcements, as he tells Charizard and Bulbasaur to get in there. Entering the fray with matching roars, the pair of Cantonian starters set to work, as Bulbasaur forces Kingler back with Razor Leaf while Charizard barrels into Rhydon, proving that it can handle the draw Pokemon just as well as Primeape did back at the Cinnabar gym. This at last frees the fighting type up to get back in the action, and refusing to squander the chance, it leaps at Marcham, going blow for blow with it, despite the superpower Pokemon having an extra set of arms at its disposal. This causes Jessie to receive her own dose of shocks, though as one would expect from her, this only makes the magenta-haired woman turn nastier, as she has all 3 of her Pokemon break off from their individual battles, and dogpile Bulbasaur as the smallest of Ash's team. Unfortunately, despite all its grit, Bulbasaur simply cannot withstand almost 700 pounds of muscle, rock and chitin being dropped on its head at once, so that when the trio of gym Pokemon clear the landing zone, they leave a very unconscious grass type in their wake. Recognizing that it's up to them now, Charizard and Primeape ready themselves for the 2v3, both prepared to put aside their differences like they did during the eruption, though also holding out little hope that their battle partner is prepared to do the same. In contrast, Jessie's team are all perfectly obedient to anyone under the Team Rocket banner, and figuring she shouldn't fix what ain't broke, she commands them to all target Charizard this time. However, unlike the decimation of Bulbasaur, only 2 of Jessie's 3 Pokemon tackle the Fire Lizard, those being Rhydon and Marcham, as they work in tandem to pin their foe with one holding Charizard's neck and wings down, while the other holds its feet and tail. At first, Ash is confused as to why Kingler didn't join in this time, though the answer becomes clear a moment later, when Jessie orders her King Crab to use Water Gun right on Charizard's trapped tail flame, intent on taking it out of this fight by any means necessary. Letting out a cry, Ash orders Primeape to intercept this, though in truth, the fighting type had already been in motion, diving across the field and catching the jet of water in its chest. In that moment, time seems to slow for Charizard, as the sound of Primeape's pained grunt fills its ears, mingled with Ash's own screams as he's electrocuted once more. Despite the fact that it has treated these 2 worse than anyone else, they are still suffering to protect it. This is true friendship. This is true strength. With this revelation, time resumes normally, and drawing on what it has learned, Charizard bucks off its 2 captors then takes to the sky, the beating of its mighty wings meant to instill fear in those who stand against it. However, even if it does not, what follows surely will, as opening its maw wide, it unleashes a torrent of flame that bathes the battlefield, consuming all 3 of the gym leader's Pokemon, while purposefully avoiding the now prone Primeape. While a small burst would surely be enough to achieve its objective, Charizard does not stop for a full minute, raising the temperature of the gym gym itself to such a level that Meowth frantically begs for someone to crank the AC or he'll bake in his fur. Then, when it is satisfied that it has conveyed its point, Charizard stops, letting the flames subside and staring down into the ashes where Machamp, Kingler and Rhydon all lie huddled and unconscious. Touching down with a fearsome glare at Team Rocket, Charizard watches as James shakily flicks Ash's final badge, then bolts with his two compatriots close on his heels, evidently not wanting to be the next victims of the dragon's wrath. However, in truth Charizard has already lost interest in them, instead bending down to offer Primeape a hand up. Recognizing the olive branch for what it is, the pig monkey accepts, rising with its rival's help and giving it a respectful nod which the flame Pokemon returns in kind. Unfortunately, their cool moment is somewhat ruined when Ash tackle hugs them, blubbering happily that they're both so awesome and that he's so glad they're all friends again. From here, all that is left is to return to Pallet Town and get ready for the league. As usual, this means rigorous training for Primeape and its pals, who now include Charizard. As while the pair are still rivals, it is a more amiable rivalry. Thanks to Charizard also helping out in the sparring, the group's growth is considerable, especially for it and Primeape, as they are some of the only Pokemon who can really push the other to their limits and beyond. As a result, the duo quickly established themselves as Ash's undeniable ace Pokemon, so that when the boy gives out on little adventures, such as to find Elite Four Bruno's secret training ground, or to meet Professor Westwood the Fifth on Seafoam Island, Primeape and Charizard are always the first Pokemon he calls when he runs into trouble. Sagely, Brock warns that over-reliance on a single Pokemon or pair of Pokemon could lead to disastrous results, as it puts too much strain on them, while also hampering the growth of the rest of his team. Though, in his usual headstrong way, Ash dismisses this, as he's simply too overjoyed at having his two former problem children Pokemon not only listen to him, but also stand as his strongest team members, as surely, that must make him some sort of Pokemon training genius to have achieved this twice. Sardonically, Misty tells him that he better wake up and smell his own delusions fast, though unfortunately, this does not happen. At least, not in time for the Pokemon League, so that when he is slated to face Mandy on the water field, he swoops with Primeape instead of Krabby, who therefore remains unevolved. Likewise, rather than honing his tactical thinking against Jeanette Fisher with Muck, Ash simply has Charizard burn down the grass field and Bellsprout alike, advancing that way instead. Nonetheless, Ash sees no problem in this, as he is made it to the top 16, and easier than in canon. It is during this time that he meets and befriends Richie, with the brunette boy being particularly impressed with how strong some of Ash's team is, with this making him even more excited to battle him, and battle they do, as following a Team Rocket scheme to kidnap his Pokemon, Ash arrives at the arena to begin their match, going with Squirtle to start things off against Happy the Butterfree. As the water type is one of Primeape's long-standing battle buddies, here it is able to show off its own improved strength, dealing more damage than in canon, though unfortunately, it still falls victim to Happy's sleep powder, and as per the rules of the Indigo League, is disqualified. Thankfully, here Pikachu steps up to the plate, taking down Happy and tying rather than losing to Zippo, so that as Ash and Richie bring out their last Pokemon, it is Charizard and a Pikachu named Sparky. However, unlike in the main timeline, this is not the gamble it would be for Ash, as when he says Flamethrower, Charizard does it, scorching Sparky and ending the match summarily in his favour. And just like that, Ash is in the top 8, where he is set to face Assunta for the right to advance to the semi-finals, though unfortunately, that will not be happening, as it is here that Ash's Pidgeys come home to roost, since with both Charizard and Primeape being exhausted from overuse, they both fall relatively early into the match, and while some of Ash's Pokemon are stronger from their training with the pair, others are weaker, meaning that when it hits crunch time, Ash's lopsided squad is simply not up to snuff, and Assunta is the one to move on. Naturally, the young man is rather disheartened by his loss, as he had let success go to his head, though recognizing that now, he is ready to learn from his failure and move on. However, when he returns home, he learns that not everyone considers what he did to be failure, as waiting for him at Oaks Lab is a massive party to celebrate his achievement in making it all the way to the quarterfinals, so that at least for today, Ash and his Pokemon are the toast of Pallet Town. We pick up with the events of Pallet Party Panic as Ash celebrates his top 8 showing at the Indigo League, with the episode going more or less like canon, except that with Charizard already being back in Ash's corner, it immediately assists in getting rid of Team Rocket, meaning the food isn't lost, and they are sent blasting off much sooner. As a result, the partygoers are able to continue celebrating with full tummies while Oak pulls Ash aside to request his help in retrieving a mysterious silver and gold Pokeball from his colleague in the Orange Archipelago, Professor Ivy, since it can't be transported, and Gary is otherwise occupied training. Eager to help help and to see new places, Ash agrees, with Brock and Misty concurring, so they set out that very day. Bidding farewell to Delia and the Professor, the trio then begin heading through the forest surrounding Pallet Town, though unfortunately, here they are accosted by a savage Firo and its flock, who seem intent on hassling not only them but the local Pidgey who are unable to defend themselves. Thankfully, Ash's Pidgeotto is able to save the day, but due to having lost out on key battling experience, namely in the Viridian Gym and Pokemopolis, it does not evolve, instead remaining in its second stage as it elects to remain behind and protect its flock. From here, events continue on their canon course for a while, with the gang arriving in the islands courtesy of a Team Rocket operated blimp and meeting Professor Ivy, who gives them the GS ball and keeps Brock, since with Ash having gone further in the league and learned from his mistakes, the pewter gym leader feels that Ivy and her team need him more. From here, it's only a short trip to Tangelo Island, where Ash befriends and captures a baby Lapras. Also Tracy is there. Then, with their new watery mount, they're able to cross the sea to Meakin Island and Ash's first Orange Islands gym. However, here is where things change, and not just because the gym is unlike any Ash has ever challenged due to not being a battle, but because when Ash learns the first challenge will be a water gun contest, he decides to put what he learned at the Indigo Plateau to use, and not simply fall back on Squirtle as his default water type. Instead, he chooses to send the Cantonian starter back to Oak's lab in favor of Krabby, since this way his lesser used catch can get some experience, and in turn, he can get some practice working with it. Taking up position in front of a line of cans, Krabby and gym leader Sissy's Seadra then begin facing off, each using water gun to knock down as many cans as they are able in the hope of earning their trainer's points. While this is easy enough, with Krabby acquitting itself well, the matter becomes more challenging when the last can falls and the target is changed to flying plates. Having experience with shooting moving targets, Seadra quickly begins to pull ahead, though this may be a blessing in disguise, as at Ash's cry the little crab taps into the potential hidden within itself that has been waiting to come out, and so evolves into a majestic Kingler. Taking this as confirmation that his choice to rotate his party was a good one, Ash encourages Kingler to keep using water gun and close the gap between itself and Seadra, though to his delight the crustacean does far more than that, letting loose its now much more powerful water gun which manages to not only take out its plates, but Seadra's too, so when the final disc explodes, Ash's points are higher than Sissy's, meaning there is no need for a tiebreaker race with the boy being presented with his Coralie badge. Letting out an overjoyed cheer, Ash and Kingler then rush to embrace each other, while from the sidelines, Tracy congratulates Ash on his win, while Misty teases that he's just like he has an incredible water type on his team. For once, Ash does not object to the jibe, instead agreeing, as he declares that he thinks he's going to keep Kingler around for a while longer as a member of his main team, since that way Squirtle can get a long overdue rest. This decision is revealed to the rest of the team that evening over dinner, and while Primeape is a little disappointed as Squirtle is a good friend and training partner, it still welcomes Kingler to join in on their sparring and other self-imposed training when they have downtime. Here, Kingler proves itself a worthy addition to the group, as while its laid-back personality does not drive it the same way it does Primeape, Charizard, and Bulbasaur, its raw strength makes up for this, with its mighty Crab Hammer being equal in strength to Primeape's Mega Kick and Bulbasaur's Vine Whip. However, the King Crab is not their only new training buddy, as having heard about Lapras's plight of being separated from its family due to being too young and weak to look after itself, Charizard feels a strong sense of kinship between the Charmander it once was and the transport Pokemon. To this end, it begins taking the water type under its wing, helping it grow stronger so it can brave the hardships life will throw at it, while ensuring it stays humble, having come to deeply regret its former arrogance. Due to operating on islands and other coastal areas, the two have plenty of chances to work on this with their friends quickly rising to assist them. In Kingler's case, this is by providing aquatic combat practice that none of the others can offer, while Bulbasaur and Primeape focus on improving its Ice Beam in the vein of their Solar Beam and Hyper Beam respectively. To a Pokemon watcher like Tracy, this pattern of behavior is utterly fascinating, with them spending many hours observing the Pokemon training amongst themselves, while questioning Ash on it. Admittedly, the boy doesn't have much he can offer, since in his eyes it's just something Primeape has kinda always done alongside a few of the others, though wisely, Tracy suggests that maybe his friend should get involved with it a bit more, since that way he'll be able to understand his Pokemon a little better and maybe even increase their synchronicity in battle. Liking the sound of that, Ash takes the bandana-clad youth up on his idea, joining in on these training sessions much to his Pokemon's delight, as they are eager to show him how much they have grown and can continue to grow with his help. However, they're not the only ones to grow, as by doing this, Ash learns something he would otherwise not discover for a long time, that being how to actually train his Pokemon. While this is not a skill he will master overnight, it is one he can steadily keep working on every time his Pokemon spar or otherwise practice, by issuing commands, giving encouragement, and watching them. This improved coordination will prove particularly useful when the crew reach Naval Island, home to the second member of the Orange Crew, as between leaving Meakin Island and arriving here, Primeape and its friends have not had much influence on the overall events, though this is all about to change. as like with Sissy's challenge, Danny's is not a battle. Instead, after trekking to the top of an icy mountain, Ash must compete in 3 successive competitions, with whoever wins 2 of them being the overall winner. For the first trial, Ash and Danny must see who can freeze a geyser of water first, with the gym leader picking his Nidoqueen while Ash naturally uses Lapras. And it is here the fruits of Lapras' training along with Primeape, Charizard and the rest come into play, as while in canon Nidoqueen cleanly beat Lapras while leaving the smaller water ice type exhausted, here they managed to tie, though more importantly Lapras still has stamina left thanks to practicing with its friends. This fact is not lost on Danny, who acknowledges Lapras as something special, since it's been a long time since anyone even came close to beating his Nidoqueen, though they'll just have to see whether Ash can keep this up for the next 2 tasks. As it turns out, the second of these is to craft their now frozen geyser into a toboggan using 3 Pokemon, who for Danny are Machoke, Scyther and Nidoqueen, while Ash picks Kingler, Bulbasaur and Charizard. Due to the fire lizard having long overcome its jerk phase, it is more than capable of completing this task by itself, and with a spirit of friendship and helping others to grow, it confines itself to clearing out the cabin, allowing Kingler's pincers and Bulbasaur's razor leaves to carve out a more comfortable interior than in canon, since they have time for such gilding while still winning the round. This leads Ash and his team to the final competition and the one to decide it all, a race back down the mountain in the sleds they have made, and for his 3 Pokemon team, this time Ash picks Bulbasaur, Primeape and Charizard. Each of these choices are for a very specific purpose, as Bulbasaur's vines will be used to steer the sled, Primeape's fist will function as a battering ram, clearing away any obstacles that might crop up in their path, and Charizard's outstretched wings will serve as a sail, making the windy mountaintop their ally. With this team, Ash is able to gain an easy lead over Danny, though this is not the only benefit, as when Team Rocket attempt to interrupt the challenge, a combined Hyper Beam, Flamethrower and Razor Leaf is more than enough to send them blasting off before they can cause any real trouble. As a result, there is no need for the race to be cancelled and re-attempted the following morning, with the pair of trainers simply holding tight and seeing this run to the end. And what an end it is, as due to turning their attention away from the race to stop Team Rocket, Ash and his squad have lost their lead, meaning Danny now stands a good chance of winning. Though spotting a rocky outcropping, Ash's Bulbasaur steer them onto it and up it, with the stones serving as a ramp that sends them skyward. Now in the air, it is child's play for Charizard to lean forward, turning their sail into a glider as they soar over Danny's head and land right in front of him, just in time to cross the finish line and win the Sea Ruby badge. Just as with their last win, this prompts a celebration from Ash and his team, while Danny in turn praises them all, stating that he can see the effort they have put into becoming a cohesive unit who understands and trusts each other, with this being exactly the sort of group who can go all the way, and maybe even defeat Drake, the Supreme Orange League gym leader. However, it seems their time as a group may be coming to an end sooner than one would expect, as during their next stop at the 7 Grapefruit Islands, Ash battles and catches a wild Snorlax. In keeping with his desire to train all his Pokemon, the boy decides to keep Snorlax with him rather than ship it straight off to Pallet Town, though this means sending one of his other Pokemon back to Oak instead. After a lot of consideration, Ash ultimately settles on Primeape as the best choice, not only since like Squadler could use a break, but because he has a job in mind for it. Just as Charizard has taken on training Lapras, he would like it to begin training his reserves back home, so that even when he can't train with them, they continue to grow stronger, both in terms of battle and their bonds as a team. Ever the loyal teammate, Primeape accepts this assignment without issue, though this does not mean it will face no issues, especially since his first group of new students upon arriving back at Oak's lab are Ash's 30 Tauros. However, if anyone can mentor this unruly bunch, it is Primeape, since like it, the herd of bulls are aggressive, hot-headed and prone to explosive outbursts of power. Recognizing this means reason probably won't be the best way to earn their respect, the pig monkey resorts to the universal language, force, and lots of it. Marching up to the rampaging herd, the fighting type pounds its chest while bellowing out a challenge that unsurprisingly the Tauros all take personal offense to, causing them to charge the smaller Pokemon en masse. Though, this is exactly what Primeape wants, as letting out a primal scream, it leaps into the fray, stomping on the front runner's snout and using that as a springboard to land on another Taurus's back in the middle of the herd. Taking the bull by the horns, it then jerks its mount's head sideways, causing it to plow through several of its fellows, while Primeape itself jumps off and begins using Thrash. At once, the fighting type transforms into a furry ball of violence, its arms and legs always in motion, be it because they are punching and kicking a nearby Tauros, or else because they are grabbing onto or bounding towards their next victim. Due to how shocking this is, the first dozen or so fall without much resistance, though being instinctual fighters, the rest of the herd quickly grow wise to Primeape's tactics and begin fighting back, ramming into the pig monkey with their heads, whipping it with their tails, and kicking it with their hooves. Nonetheless, Primeape does not yield, taking the damage and then using the enemy's position to its advantage, as it grabs hold of whatever it can and starts slamming them into the ground or where possible hurling them into their fellows. As it had hoped, this does a good job of thinning their ranks even further, though by now Thrash is coming to an end, leaving the fighting type lightheaded and dizzy dizzy from fatigue. To make matters worse, 10 Tauros are still standing, or rather circling Primeape, as they are the toughest of the lot, with the piggish pugilist recognizing that these 10 will do serious lasting damage to it if it falls here. However, after all the effort it's exerted on this fight, it also knows that it can't stay standing much longer, and so marshalling the last of its strength, it prepares for the final attack. As this happens, the 10 Tauros stop circling, and figuring Primeape must be too exhausted to keep going, they rush it from all sides. Good. The pig monkey's plan would not have worked had they done anything else, as screaming at the top of its lungs, it lets loose a hyper beam. Though this is not meant for just one foe, as by spinning in a circle, Primeape is able to whip its hyper beam in a wide arc, collecting all 10 Tauros before they can make contact and blowing them away. In the aftermath of this attack, Primeape is the last one standing, surrounded by the unconscious bodies of the 30 bull Pokemon. Not that it stays that way for long, as having used up every ounce of strength it has left, it collapses onto its back with spirals for eyes. Thankfully, this fall does not change the outcome of the fight, as having outlasted the entire Tauros herd, Primeape is hereafter recognized as their undisputed leader. This had been the pig monkey's goal, as now that it is the wild bunch listening to it, any questions of its qualification to serve as teacher to the rest of Ash's Mons are immediately forgotten. As a result, Primeape is able to get to work as soon as it is recovered, teaching the other Pokemon how to spar and train. Thankfully with Squirtle here, it has an assistant in this process, who knows the others better than it does, and due to its leadership skills from its Squirtle Squad days, is able to translate Primeape's blunt and abrasive lessons into something more relaxed Pokemon like Muck can get behind. Thanks to this, the lab team make good progress on their training, all seeing decent growth, while Primeape and Squirtle supervise, and occasionally join in when they feel things are running smoothly enough on their own. This does unfortunately mean they're the ones to achieve the least in this time, though considering their task was to help others and they both possess a strong team-centric mentality, there's not a major problem to either of them. Finally, after several weeks of this, Professor Oak informs Primeape that Ash wants it back on active duty, a request the pig monkey jumps at, allowing Oak to return to its ball so the next thing it knows, it is being called forth onto an indoor battlefield. Across from it, a Marowak and Alakazam stand ready to battle, while to its right, Charizard is likewise assuming a fighting stance. At the sight of its rival, the fire lizard roars eagerly, while filling it in on what's missed. This is Ash's fourth and final Orange League gym match, which takes the form of a double battle with a twist, whereby if one Pokemon faints, their team loses. They'll have to watch each other's backs if they want to win this. Letting out an amused burble that Charizard is the one lecturing it on teamwork, Primeape steps forward, declaring its readiness to fight alongside its co-ace, while stating that it hopes this time it won't have to take a super effective move for it. Smirking, the flame Pokemon retorts that in turn, it hopes it won't have to carry the team to victory while Primeape's laid down on its back like last time either. With these friendly taunts, the battle begins, seeing Ash tell Primeape to target Marowak and Charizard to take Alakazam, a wise pairing considering the Psy Pokemon could do serious harm to the pig monkey if they were to clash. However, as Luana the gym leader is quick to point out, if Ash approaches this as two single battles concurrently, he's going to struggle, since the essence of this kind of match is teamwork. To this end, she has Alakazam cast Reflect, which results in a pair of protective bubbles forming around itself and Marowak, cutting the damage of the fighting type's punch, while Marowak in turn sweeps its bone across the ground like a golf club, collecting several rocky chunks of the battlefield which soar diagonally into Charizard, making it bellow with pain as the quad-effective rock slide hits. Recognizing Luana's point, Ash tells his two mons to form up, with Charizard flying low, while Primeape leaps onto its back. Despite having never done this before, both Pokemon have enough trust and faith in the other that from the outside it looks as though this is a well-practiced combo move, earning the gym leader's praise. Nonetheless, she does not let this stop her from attacking, by having Marowak use Rock Slide again, while Alakazam teleports above them, and attempts to knock Primeape off its perch with a joint spoon strike. However, here is where the teamwork of Ash's Pokemon shines, as when the Psychic type attempts its attack, Charizard raises a wing to counter the hit, while at the same time Primeape unleashes a flurry of punches and karate chops at any stone that gets near its friend, reducing them all to dust and preventing any damage. Seeing that this strategy isn't working, Luana tells Alakazam to teleport back to the ground, though this just gives Charizard and Primeape the breathing room they need to carry out Ash's next plan, as he tells his pig monkey to jump into Charizard's arms while having the fiery dragon start flying in a circle, seemingly enacting a seismic toss on its teammate. However, this is in fact a carefully coordinated tag move, as on the boys' cry, Charizard hurls the fighting type right at Marowak for a fastball special enhanced mega kick that pancakes the Bonekeeper Pokemon against the wall. While there's not enough to knock it out, it certainly does daze it, leaving Alakazam in a position where it must handle two foes at once until its partner recovers. Fortunately for the gym leader, the Psychic type is more than up to the task when it's not caught off kilter, being her strongest and most seasoned companion, as with a flash of its eyes, it freezes Charizard in place psionically, before slamming it right into Primeape. As expected, this leaves both of Ash's Pokemon in a heap, and figuring range is the secret to beating them, Luana next calls for a Hyper Beam which Alakazam hastily charges up and fires directly at the prone pair. Recovering first, as it was not the one crushed by a giant lizard, Charizard staggers back to its feet, and seeing the blast coming, braces itself to tank the hit in Primeape's place as a means of repaying it for Viridian. That is assuming it can't beat it, as letting out a prideful roar, it fires a full-force flamethrower into the Hyper Beam, causing them to clash in mid-air. In a testament to Charizard's strength, this burst of flame is enough to stop the final Orange crew member's beam in its track, though sadly, it is not enough to overpower it, creating a stalemate that will seemingly go on until one of their staminas give out. Meanwhile, both Primeape and Marowak are in the process of getting to their feet, and knowing that whichever of them strikes first will likely determine the outcome of the battle, the Pigmonkey wills itself to push ahead, standing tall and charging a Hyper Beam of its own between its hands. Then, with a scream of its name, it fires the blast directly into Charizard's flamethrower, combining the two attacks into a spiral of fire and orange energy that carries the united power of two long-time rivals. Against such an attack, a lone Hyper Beam cannot stand, and so it comes as little surprise when all three moves are driven back into Alakazam, who is blown into the back wall and rendered unconscious, ending the battle. For his efforts, Ash is given his Jade Star badge, while behind him Charizard and Primeape fist bump, both pleased to have played their part in Ash getting his final badge. To the Pigmonkey's pleasant surprise, it is not returned to the lab after this, instead staying on Ash's team as he makes a few more stops on the way to Pumelo Island. While this doesn't really change the plot as Misty still catches her Poliwag and Tracy meets Dr. Quack and Poker, it does get to reunite with its other friends, particularly Lapras, who it is impressed to see has gone from a timid baby to a stout member of Ash's squad, having apparently even helped fight the Trevita Island gym leader Rudy. As its mentor, Charizard is immensely proud of the Water-Ice type, and how far it's come, both as a battler and in its personal growth, with Primeape being eager to spar with it and test its abilities personally. Unfortunately, there won't be time for such a match, as before anyone knows it, they arrive on Pumelo Island, which is home to Drake in the site of Ash's final match. After scanning his badges, Ash is cleared to battle first thing tomorrow morning for a full 6-on-6. Understandably, this does shake the boy slightly, as he remembers his last full battle in which his own arrogance and short-sightedness cost him a shot at being the next Indigo League champion, though reassuringly, Misty tells him that he's come a long way since then, and she knows he'll do great tomorrow if he just keeps his head in battle smart like he's been doing lately. Adding his own support, Tracy suggests that his friend use the rest of the day to think carefully about what team he wants to use, though smiling, Ash replies that he's already been thinking about that, as he explains that his chosen 6 will be Pikachu, Primeape, Charizard, Lapras, Snorlax, and Muk. While the first 3 choices make a lot of sense, and even Snorlax and Lapras have a certain logic considering the time Ash has put into training them, Misty and Tracy do question why he'd pick Muk for such a pivotal match considering he's never actually used it in a battle before. However, still grinning, Ash replies that this is a big part of why he's doing it. He feels he owes it to Muk to allow it a chance to prove itself since it hasn't had that yet. Not to mention Primeape's been training all his buddies back home, so we can only imagine how strong it's gotten as it was already a powerhouse when they fought it back in Gringy City. With this settled, all there is left to do is hold one last training session and get a good night's sleep, so the next morning when Ash is called into Pumelo Stadium, he and his Pokemon are raring to go. Stepping into the arena, they are greeted by Drake, who is an amiable if perhaps slightly aloof man, who states that he hopes the boy will give him a good challenge since most don't. Confidently, Ash replies that he'll give Drake more than a challenge, he's gonna hand him a loss, causing the Supreme Orange Crew gym leader to smile that he likes that spirit, though they'll have to see if he can walk that talk. As has become standard for him by this point, Drake opens the match with Ditto, since it's how he likes to test trainers to see if they can keep their cool when their own Pokemon is being used against them. In response, Ash uses Pikachu, with the match more or less going like canon, seeing Pikachu earn the win and impress Drake, since as the announcer is quick to point out, many trainers never even get past this first hurdle. For his second Pokemon, Drake goes with Onix, and having something of a history with the rock snake species that generally ends with him getting crushed, Pikachu is all too eager to retreat and leap into Ash's arms when the boy calls him back, and in his place chooses Snorlax. However, to the shock of Drake, the announcer, and the audience, this Pokemon is fast asleep, while from the stands Misty screams at Ash, calling him a numbskull, since Nurse Joy told him it would be asleep for a few days after it ate last night, so he should have swapped it out for another of his reserves like she told him. Truthfully, Drake has to agree with the girl, or at least he does until he looks into Ash's eyes, as he alone among them does not appear surprised by this turn of events. No, if anything, he looks as though everything is going according to plan, with this calm surety intriguing the island champ. Nonetheless, this does not cause him to hesitate when calling his attack, as in his experience, most trainers have a plan. It's just that the majority of them are bad, half-baked, or built on a gross estimation of their own skill, and while Ash has already proven himself better than most, this doesn't mean he's immune from fault, such as leaving a sleeping Pokemon out in the open where Onix can demolish it for an easy win. To this end, he has Onix use Bind, with the Rock Serpent quickly wrapping around the tub of lard and squeezing it for all it's worth. Even with its bulk, this does damage to Snorlax, a fact made evident by the pained grimace on its face, though, as Drake is about to learn, this comes at a cost, as all this pressure is enough to make Snorlax wake up and choose violence. results, specifically in the form of a very angry Mega Punch, which connects with Onix's head and sends it crashing into the pool at the center of the battlefield where it lies unconscious, shocking the crowd. As the rock ground type just got taken out by one hit from a move it resists. Seeing Snorlax for the beast it is now, Drake's next choice is Gengar, a wise one considering most of the normal type's moves can't hit it. However, inversely this should mean most of Gengar's moves also can't land on Snorlax, or at least this is what Ash thinks until it uses Confuse Ray to befuddle the bulky bruiser. At once Snorlax begins attacking itself, forcing its trainer to recall it for now, while in its place he brings out Lapras. Like with Pikachu, this match is similar to their cannon fight, though when it reaches their climactic Ice Beam and Nightshade clash, things go a little differently, since thanks to training this attack onto Bulbasaur and Primeape, Lapras' Ice Beam wins out against Gengar's Nightshade rather than tying with it, meaning it stays standing, or rather swimming, while the Ghost Poison type is knocked out. This shockingly gives Ash a 3-0 lead over the Supreme Gym Leader, prompting the changing of the battlefield from a rocky stage with a pool to a sandy desert field. Recognizing this will be suboptimal for Lapras, Ash does not send it back in, instead watching as Drake chooses Venusaur, since this makes his decision all the easier, with him calling forth Charizard. Taking flight with a bellow, the fire-flying type is easily able to avoid the pitfall of being stuck the Tauros head in cannon, allowing it to soar over the sandy ground and begin scorching Venusaur. In retaliation, Drake uses grass-type use Vine Whip, though when Charizard is easily able to withstand these, he turns to something a bit stronger, Solar Beam. Thanks to Bulbasaur, Ash knows just how powerful this move is, to the point where once it's charged up, it might even be enough to take down Charizard. Having no desire to lose one of his strongest Pokemon, Ash tells the Fire type to lift Venusaur into the air and use Seismic Toss. However, this is easier said than done, as due to how large and heavy the Grass type is, Charizard takes a long time to rise up and start building momentum, all the while Venusaur keeps charging its beam rather placidly. As a result, when Charizard goes to throw its fellow Kanto starter, Venusaur unleashes its attack, blasting it point blank with all the power of the sun. Unsurprisingly, this is enough to make Charizard recoil with pain, dropping more than throwing its foe. However, after all the speed and force that's built up, this is still enough to finish things off, so that as Venusaur lands in a cartoonish cloud of dust and sand, it has spirals for eyes, though at the cost that Ash's Fire Flyer also looks significantly worse for wear. Hoping to capitalize on this, Drake's penultimate pick is Electabuzz, and knowing an Electric type is a bad matchup for a wounded Charizard, Ash recalls it in favor of Muck. As is its way, Muck's first instinct is to smother its trainer with affection, causing the boy to laugh that he can really feel all the strength it's gained through the force of this hug, though he'd really appreciate it if he could point that power at Electabuzz instead of him. Warbling happily at the thought of helping Ash out, Muck then makes his way into the field, its sludgy arms outstretched towards the rival Electric type. Unfortunately, it seems Electabuzz is in no mood for a hug, as babbling aggressively, it begins launching off a torrent of thunderbolts, all of which Muck's body seems to absorb, taking minimal damage while it makes its way closer and closer. Finally, when the sludge Pokemon is within close quarters, Electabuzz switches to Thunder Punches, driving 2 blows into its mushy head and body, only to be met by similar lacking results, so that before it knows it, Muck is upon it, enveloping the Electric Pokemon in its embrace. Desperately, Electabuzz tries to break free, as its waist and then shoulders are consumed, though to no avail, so that soon, even its head is lost in the mound of living goo that is Muck. Seeing this as an open and shut win, Ash cheers for the Poison type, telling it all they have left is Drake's final Pokemon, though unfortunately Muck doesn't seem to hear, instead appearing to be dealing with a bad case of indigestion. However, as everyone will soon learn, it is not indigestion but rather Electabuzz breaking free, as by raining down dozens of Thunder Punches from inside Muck, it has managed to aerate the slime enough that it has the breathing room to unleash a full-force Thunderbolt. Such an attack takes a massive toll on the Electric Pokemon's internal battery, though it is more than worth it, as for that price, it is not only able to blast Muck off it, but also into the back wall, where it slowly leaks down the side, clearly unconscious. Thanking Muck for its effort, Ash returns the Poison type while in its place bringing out Primeape. Having waited patiently throughout everyone else's battles, Primeape is pumped to fight, and when it spots its foe readying a punch coated in electricity, its excitement only grows. On Ash's command, it meets this with a Mega Kick, a perfect choice as far as it is concerned, so that as the pair of Pokemon rush at each other, their limbs cross over one another, with Electabuzz burying its fist in Primeape's face, while it does the same with its foot. For a moment, Primeape worries that the force of the blow will cause it to slip on the sand and land on its back, a very bad outcome as this will leave it vulnerable to all manner of attacks from above. However, it seems this is not something it will have to concern itself with for much longer, as a second later, Electabuzz keels over, clearly spent, allowing it to lower its leg and stand over its vanquished foe. Now Drake is down to his last Pokemon, with this honor going to Dragonite, who Ash recognizes from the statues guarding the island. At once he realizes this must be an extremely powerful Pokemon if Drake is able to keep looking confident when facing down a 5v1. Nonetheless, he has faith in his Pokemon too, especially Lapras, who he calls out next, telling it to use Ice Beam as hopefully a couple of these super effective hits will be able to down the dragon before it can become a problem. As he had hoped, this honed beam attack is both strong and fast enough to connect with Dragonite, freezing a chunk of its underbelly, while Drake commends Ash on this success, though he should be aware that he is not the only one with a super effective move. At these words, Dragonite dives, the speed of its descent being so strong that it cleaves the ice from the dragon-type scales while allowing it to close in and deliver a point-blank thunder. Being an aquatic creature on sand, Lapras has nowhere to run from this, and while it is much stronger than it is in canon, most of its fighting experience comes from sparring, with this only being its second ever real battle. As a result of this, and the sheer force of Drake's ace, the transport Pokemon falls here to the surprise of no one. Next up for Ash is Snorlax, hoping its bulk can tank Dragonite's power. Unfortunately it cannot, as having seen this monster's raw might against Onix, Drake does not mess around, calling immediately for a Hyper Beam. In turn, Ash attempts to respond in kind, having his normal type use Hyper Beam as well, though when the two beams clash, Snorlax is quickly overcome, resulting in it being promptly knocked unconscious as well thanks to Dragonite's strength and the damage it received earlier. Now getting a little desperate, Ash brings out Charizard to face Drake's monstrous ace, with the pair trading aerial blows back and forth. To start things off, Dragonite uses Water Gun to counter Charizard's flamethrowers, which more often than not succeed in dousing not only the flames, but the flame Pokemon for super effective damage, and lots of it. In fact, it is something of a minor miracle that Charizard can survive one of these, let alone multiple after that Solar Beam. Though hanging tough, it switches to Dragon Rages on Ash's command, since these should at least be able to pay Dragonite back with a little super effective damage of their own. While this is a good idea, there is one problem. Dragonite also knows this move, and being an actual dragon type, its rages are stronger, so that when they meet in the middle, Charizard's orbs are blown apart or consumed. Unfortunately, this also marks the end of the Firestar's tenure in the battle, as a 1-2 punch of these to its face are enough to drop Charizard out of the sky, and as it goes scraping across the sand on its belly, its eyes become spirals. Smiling that no one can say it didn't give it its all, Ash then recalls it while bringing Primeape back as his penultimate Pokemon. Still being mostly fresh, Primeape feels confident that it can handle Dragonite, that is if it can reach it, as all the guts in the world do not give one the power of flight. Fortunately, Drake sees to this, as feeling sporting towards the boy who's actually given him a challenge, he has Dragonite repeatedly swoop so they can trade blows, body slams and skull bashes from Dragonite, and mega kicks and thrashes from Primeape. However, to the Pigmonkey's dismay, these lack any real power, as the shifting sands once again prove to be its greatest hindrance, since they prevent it from properly grounding itself. Were this not bad enough, this lack of stability also means that more than once it is bowled over by Dragonite's attacks, forcing it to leap back up and barely recover in time as to not be swooped while prone. This poses a real problem, as with conditions the way they are, Primeape cannot fathom how it is meant to beat Dragonite, though as it is quick to remind itself, it doesn't have to. What matters is the team comes out on top, not that it does. This realization is an incredibly liberating one, as it opens up a new option that it otherwise would never have considered. The only question is, how can it communicate this idea to its human partner, since ultimately the call is his? Looking back at Ash urgently, the feisty fighting type begins making a gesture with its hands, one that it knows Ash is familiar with. The question is whether this is enough of a clue. Thankfully, it is, as having learned a lot from being a part of his Pokemon's training rather than just allowing it to happen, he's able to understand Primeape's plan, and so smiling confidently, he nods for Primeape to do it. Burbling gratefully at this, Primeape begins gathering power just as Dragonite begins to swoop again, this time readying a body slam that will hopefully end this match once and for all. However, in forming that strategy, Drake can not account for one thing, Primeape's Hyper Beam, as when the Dragon type gets close, it fires the blast at point blank range into Dragonite's face. Naturally, such a surprise hit is enough to send the Dragon Pokemon veering off course and even make it crash headlong into a pile of sand. However, having learned from his premature celebration with Muck, Ash does not assume anything, instead holding his breath and waiting for the result. Unfortunately, this time it is not in his favor, as after a moment, a badly battered Dragonite does rise, with the battle therefore being called to commence. Though this is not the only thing Ash has to worry about, as now Hyper Beam's side effect kicks in just as Primeape knew it would, leaving the Pigmonkey exhausted and completely exposed. Seeing this, Drake gives the command for retaliatory close-range thunder, and knowing that it's played its part, Primeape locks locks eyes with Pikachu, wordlessly passing the torch to him before being struck by lightning and collapsing into unconsciousness. This just leaves the electric starter as Ash's final Pokemon, though after battling most of Ash's team, Dragonite appears to be on its last legs, while Pikachu is in relatively good condition after his break. Nonetheless, the boy does not take anything for granted, as he immediately tells his partner to go all out with Thunder. Likewise, Drake instructs his ace to do the same, since with its stamina coming to an end, their best course of action is an all-or-nothing gambit to take Pikachu out in a single blow. At once, bright yellow light fills the interior of Pomelo Stadium as the two final Pokemon charge up their electrical attacks, then in unison release them, seeing them meet in the middle with a cacophony of fizzes, crackles, and sparks. Such force is enough to push both Pokemon back a little, though this is less of an issue for Dragonite, whose wings allow it to hover mostly in place, while Pikachu must slide around on the sand. However, even this disadvantage is not enough to make Ash or his starter quit, as in a resolute tone, he commands him to make one last push holding absolutely nothing back. At these words, a massive aura of electricity begins forming around Pikachu, as he draws out every reserve he has, with the knowledge that when this move ends, he's going down. The question is just if he can take Dragonite out first. In that moment, something seems to shift in the electrical aura, and while it may just be a trick of the light, for those watching keenly, they may see the faintest silhouette of Pikachu's 5 teammates, each of whom gave their strength so that he could be standing here now. Then, as this aura coalesces into a jolt that races up Pikachu's already powerful Thunder attack, Dragonite's version of the move can stand no chance, dissipating and allowing Pikachu's attack to strike it head-on, so that it plummets face-first into the sand once more, this time unconscious. As expected, Pikachu is left completely drained, so that even a faint breeze could knock him out, though by now the referee has already raised his flag, making the call that Dragonite is unable to battle, so Ash Ketchum has won the 6v6 and become an Orange League champion. We pick up as Ash and friends prepare to depart the Orange Islands in the wake of Ash's victory over Drake. Naturally, he is over the moon and can't wait to show his mum the trophy he won as soon as he gets home, though it seems there will be another parent-child reunion before his, that being between his Lapras and its mother. As while riding on the transport Pokemon's back, Ash and friends come across a band of pirates harassing a herd of the gently natured water-ice types. Due to the confidence it has gained from its time training with the team and specifically its mentorship under Charizard, Lapras does not hesitate to charge them down, while Ash calls forth the members of his Orange League winning team to back them up. When faced with heavy hitters like Primeape and Charizard, not to mention Pikachu who is raring to go, the criminals disperse, figuring there's easier and safer loot to be had, meaning the events of Viva Las Lapras wrap up early. However, inherent in that is the fact that Lapras will be leaving with its herd and mother, a realization that makes Ash rather sad, though also proud for how far his timid friend has grown to the point where it can fearlessly defend the ones it loves from danger. This is obviously a trait inherited from its time spent under Charizard's guidance, the Fire-type being invited to say its own goodbye to Lapras, as Ash knows the bond these two have formed is just as strong as his own with the transport Pokemon. Though to the boy's surprise, the Flame Pokemon is not despondent or angered by this news, instead bellowing proudly, as this is why it began mentoring Lapras in the first place, so it would have the strength it needs to thrive, and clearly it has gained that, so Charizard feels nothing but joy for Lapras. Or almost nothing, as when its disciple departs, Charizard flies alongside as a sort of honor guard, with it not leaving the water-type side until it has met up with its herd. Even then, Charizard does not return to Ash, instead roaring a goodbye and waving the Lapras off as it rises higher and higher into the air in an attempt to keep its protege in view for just a few seconds longer. Only when the transport pack has crossed the horizon does the Fire Lizard touch back down on the beach beside its trainer, with Ash at last spotting some sorrow mingled in with the pride, as in spite of the knowledge that this is for the best and what will make Lapras happiest, a small selfish part of the starter wishes it could have remained here with all of them. Recognizing this, Ash lays a hand on Charizard's shoulder and nods that he gets it, but no matter how far apart they are, Lapras will always be their friend, with this comforting the pseudo-dragon, as it bellows out one last proud and mournful goodbye, then returns to its ball. Following this, things mostly keep to their canon path for the rest of the heroes' time in the Orange Islands, with Ash and Co arriving back in Pallet Town before too long, where they are reunited with the traumatized Brock who has left Professor Ivy's island permanently, and Professor Oak, who is delighted to take the GS Ball and Tracy off of Ash's hands. Though the real point of interest comes when Ash and Gary cross paths again, as after hearing that Ashy Boy actually won the Orange League, the younger Oak is eager to test himself against his rival, with Ash in turn feeling now is the time to settle things between them. Taking up positions in a flat part of the Oak Corral, Ash and Gary agree to keep things simple, a 1v1 with nothing held back. In the interest of fairness, they both choose their Pokemon at the same time, and while Ash does consider both Charizard and Primeape as they're some of his biggest powerhouses, he ultimately settles on the friend that was able to overcome Drake's Dragonite, therefore being Pikachu who leaps from his shoulder to confront Gary's Eevee. Figuring fortune favors the bold, Ash's Pikachu start things off with a quick attack, though showing his more tactical style of thinking, Gary responds with a reflect that sees the electric rodent forced to break through a barrier before reaching Eevee, thus notably dissipating the attack's damage. Nonetheless, Ash is nothing if not persistent, as he next calls for a Thunderbolt that Eevee meets with Double Team, forcing Pikachu to try and spot the real normal type among the fakes as they all race towards him. Thankfully, having heard the tale of its battle against the 30 Tauros from Primeape, Pikachu does have a solution to this, redirecting his Thunderbolt in a wide sweeping arc across the battlefield similar to the Pigmonkey's spinning Hyper Beam that catches and dissipates all the Eevee duplicates before striking the real one and sending it crashing to the ground. From the shocked look on Gary's face, it is clear that he didn't think Ashy Boy would land even a single hit on Eevee, with this surprise acting as a bolstering force to both the black-haired boy and Pikachu, the latter of whom then races forward to strike the down normal type with a follow-up quick attack that sends it skittering back even further. Knowing he needs to regain control of the battle now or he'll risk losing, Gary instructs Eevee to strike back with Skull Bash, a move the evolution Pokemon has such proficiency with that Pikachu doesn't even see it coming until it's found purchase in his gut. Now it is the electric rodent's turn to be sent tumbling backwards, though being savvy enough not to fall for the same trick twice, when Eevee attempts to finish him off with a second Skull Bash, Ash's Pikachu leap into the air with agility, avoiding the blow entirely. Unfortunately, this is a temporary reprieve at most, so on Gary's command Eevee launches itself skyward with Takedown, forcing Ash to respond with Quick Attack as the two Pokemon lunge at one another. A moment later, a powerful crack rings through the corral as the pair's heads collide, the impact of which is enough to rustle the ground 10 feet beneath them, though that is not all it does, as it also spells the end of the battle, with both Pikachu and Eevee crashing to the ground, and neither getting back up. From the sidelines, Brock announces that this battle has ended in a draw, causing both trainers to run in and inspect their Pokemon while giving thanks for how hard they fought. When this is done, the two rivals' eyes meet, and while Ash expects some barb from Gary about how this doesn't counter how he was holding back, he is instead surprised when the younger comments that Ashy Boy wasn't half bad. Though make no mistake, next time they battle, he's gonna win for sure. With this, the auburn-haired youth then hoists his rucksack over his shoulder and begins walking off, while Ash calls out after him, demanding to know where he's going. Flashing his trademark cocky grin, Gary replies that he's heading west to the nearby Johto region, since there's loads of new Pokemon there to catch and a league just waiting for him to beat it. Grin growing on his own face, Ash retorts not if he beats it first, to which Gary replies that he guesses he'll see him in the Johto League finals then, before giving him a backhanded wave and stating that he'll smell him later. With his goal now set, Ash is eager to begin this new journey, and it is fortunate that he is, as Professor Oak asks if he can deliver the GS ball to his old friend Kurt in Azalea Town, since try though he might, he cannot get the mysterious Pokeball to respond to him. Always happy to help, Ash quickly agrees, with it therefore being a team of him, Brock and Misty who depart for Johto the very next day following a farewell dinner at the Ketchum household. Though, before they go, Ash needs to decide on how he's going to rotate his team, since he wants to give some of his heavy hitters a chance to rest after their championship match, while also reuniting with some others who've been away and give them some personal attention. But by the same token, he doesn't want an entirely reserved team, as Johto is a whole new place with its own challenges, so he needs to put his best foot forward and be prepared. Ultimately, with all this in mind, he settles on the squad of Pikachu, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, one of his Tauros, Charizard and Primeape, though it seems the grass poison type's Johto tenure will be a rather brief one, as a few days into the journey, Ash catches himself a Heracross who is overly fond of sucking on its bulb, and since he wants to spare his old friend this distress, while also getting a chance to train Heracross rather than depositing it directly to the lab, the bug fighter winds up taking Bulbasaur's slot on the team. This unfortunately does leave Primeape and Charizard down a training buddy, though as it turns out, Heracross is happy to fill the void, as despite its happy-go-lucky nature, it is a surprisingly dedicated fighter who wants to grow stronger, and to its great fortune, it now finds itself in a team with two Pokemon perfectly positioned to help it achieve that ambition, as Primeape is excited at the arrival of a fellow fighting type and so begins to spar frequently with it, while Charizard is equally pleased to have a new flyer who it can practice aerial combat with, as it hasn't been able to do that since Pidgeotto left the squad. As a result, Heracross soon finds itself rising through the ranks and becoming another powerhouse for Ash, though it is not the only one, as Tauros also partakes in the training, all the while showing great deference to Primeape as the Pokemon who claim leadership of the herd from it. However, one Pokemon who is far less respectful is Ash's next capture, a Chikorita who upon seeing Primeape, Charizard and the others training barges her way in and insists on being included, despite being significantly younger and smaller than the rest. This ambition mixed with the grass type's passionate headstrong demeanor and evident fighting spirit reminds Primeape a lot of itself, and with Bulbasaur being back at the lab, the Pigmonkey decides to take the spunky starter under its wing. To Primeape's surprise, having a disciple is significantly different from the sort of teaching it did during its stint at Oaks, as back then it was more of a drill sergeant, bringing all the reserves up to snuff by instilling them with the basics of battling and training, but here it must devise specific lessons and training exercises that are designed to suit Chikorita's strengths and personality. Luckily, Primeape doesn't have to do this alone or from scratch, as looking to Charizard, who has experience as a teacher, it is able to receive some guidance on mentoring that makes this process much simpler. In turn, Chikorita proves to be a good student, as she is quick-witted and feisty enough to persist no matter what the fighting type throws her way, growing with each lesson and only strengthening her fighting spirit. Nor is this plainer than when Ash challenges the Violet City Gym, as like in canon he chooses to use the grass type in the first round. However, unlike canon, Chikorita actually has the strength to defeat Falkner's Hoot Hoot and Dodrio, only narrowly losing to his ace Pidgeot due to type disadvantage, and clearing the way for Pikachu to come in and finish the job. Despite not being the one to actually defeat the gym leader, Primeape is immensely proud of its apprentice, though in the fashion of a warrior, this is displayed through deeds, not words, as while the Pig Monkey Pokemon does not rain praise down on Chikorita, it does formally invite her to join in on the sparring and training, marking her as the potential to keep up with Ash's aces, and perhaps in time become one herself. Meanwhile, now that the Zephyr badge is in his possession, Ash and his friends begin making their way to Azalea Town, with this leg of the journey being one Primeape's presence has very little bearing on outside the Pig Monkey trying to fight a giant Arbok tank to save Togepi, even if it is a vain effort. However, this all changes when the episode Charizard's Burning Ambition rolls around, as thanks to having several sparring partners and a long-time rival rather than sitting on its butt doing nothing and only battling chumps far below its level, Charizard is much stronger here, strong enough to actually fight Liza and her Charizard Charla to a stalemate. Thanks to this, the Fire Lizard is deemed worthy to train in the Charicific Valley if it wants, though shockingly, it refuses, since with all the aforementioned things working in its favour as a part of Ash's team, it has no desire to leave, while also remembering the pain of parting with Lapras. Though, when our heroes depart, Liza makes sure Charizard knows the offer to train here is open-ended, with the Flame Pokemon in turn letting in a bellow meant to convey that it may well take her up on her offer someday, just not today. From here, Primeape's impact on the plot remains rather indirect for a while longer, with the next notable change coming in Wired for Battle, when Heracross absolutely trounces Shingo's Scizor Blade, thanks to his time spent training with the two aces from Kanto. Not long after this, the journey to Azalea Town comes to an end, with Ash entrusting the GS Ball to Kurt as bid, though not before he adds Cyndaquil to his team, who becomes yet another student of Charizard's thanks to their shared fire typing, resulting in a humorous dynamic developing in which Chikorita deems Cyndaquil her rival since it is the disciple of her master's rival, while Cyndaquil doesn't get any of that, and just wishes the mean veggie monster would stop sneak attacking it randomly as her preferred means of training. Meanwhile, as part of its training, Ash takes on Bugsy with the two fire types, having Cyndaquil face Spinarak, though when it becomes clear it has an issue with igniting the fire on its back, Ash is able to buy it time by switching into Charizard, who has no difficulty with the first two foes, before allowing Cyndaquil to come back in for the battle against Scyther. Thanks to not being as worn out from Spinarak, Cyndaquil is in a much better state coming into this battle, and when coupled with the fact that it is now literally and figuratively fired up, it makes short work of the Bug Flyer, earning a victory for Ash. Nonetheless, neither Ash nor Charizard forget how badly things could have gone, with the focus of their training now being on teaching Cyndaquil how to ignite the flames on its back at will. Admittedly, this is somewhat difficult for Charizard at first, as its fire has been lit from the moment of its birth, so it has no frame of reference for what Cyndaquil is struggling with, though when Primeape helps recontextualize it like manifesting a powerful flamethrower, the Cantonian starter instantly understands, and so not only helps his little friend to ignite its flames through numerous demonstrations and practices, but also instills some fire-type pride in this achievement to burn away at its timidness and make it less of a baby within the group. However, with gain also comes loss, as not long after this Ash finds himself saying goodbye to Squirtle as it rejoins the Squirtle squad now as firefighters, with this being a particularly sad development for all the remaining members of the Kanto squad, who each have a moment with the squirting turtle to wish it luck and express how much their time together as friends, teammates, and training partners meant to them. Thankfully, Ash is not left without a water type for long, as a short time later, Totodile joins the team, when Chikorita puts its training to the test alongside a temporarily returned Bulbasaur and Pikachu to beat Misty in a 3v3 for ownership of the Croc. Though in contrast to the other two Johto starters, the Big Jaw Pokemon does not become an older team member's student, being more of a carefree goofball who would rather put the time into dancing. Truthfully, Primeape finds this attitude baffling, though it does not hold any ill will towards Totodile, treating it like any other member of the squad during meals or when Ash has them train together, but seldom seeking its company. And speaking of students, it is not long before Charizard's one gets a moment of its own, as shortly after this comes the episode Hot Matches, which is markedly different and much briefer than in canon, as with Cyndaquil already able to light its flames at will, Ash defeats Miki and her Skarmory during their first battle, ending her streak of beating fire types prematurely. Not long after this, Ash meets and catches his shiny Noctowl, though it is sent to the lab so Oak can examine its unique coloration, with this whole series of events being yet another that Primeape plays little part in. In fact, the Pigmonkey's next chance to help is in Forest Grumps, as following an altercation with Team Rocket, a group of Ursaring attack, and while in canon the heroes flee and are eventually overrun, here with heavy hitters like Charizard and Primeape on their side, they decide to stand and fight instead. As a result, Ash along with Brock and Misty bring out their Pokemon, while even Team Rocket agree to join forces with the Twerps, calling forth Arbok, Weezing, Victorybell, and new addition Wobbuffet. Naturally, Ash's two rival aces stand at the head of this group, both looking determined as this is the sort of challenge they live for, though as the pack of normal types descend upon them, they do briefly show a glance that is half wishing the other luck and half promising to compare KO counts when this is done. Then, without need for a signal, they both throw themselves into the melee, with Primeape firing off a Hyper Beam that helps thin the ranks of raging Ursaring, while Charizard grabs one of the larger ones and seismic tosses it into the ground, creating a shockwave that bowls several more over. Meanwhile, their friends are not far behind them, with Chikorita and Cyndaquil seeming the most determined. As in an attempt to emulate their masters, the little fire starter lets loose a torrent of flame that strikes an Ursaring in the face, while its grassy counterpart uses her vines like a tripwire by tying them around a nearby tree trunk and allowing one of the Hibernator Pokemon to stumble over them and crash face first into the dirt. Bolstered by this success, the two students continue taking out Ursaring, and while they don't defeat quite as many as their mentors, they do both make significant contributions to the battle, so that when the dust settles they can meet each other's eyes with the knowledge they both pulled their weight, while the first glimmers of a mutual rivalry begin to show themselves. From here, both Cyndaquil and Chikorita begin spending more and more time training under their teachers, with this being good training for all four of them, as only 3 episodes later, Ash arrives at the Goldenrod Gym to challenge for his third Johto Gym badge. Like in canon, this starts with Cyndaquil getting 2 fairly easy wins against Nidorina and Clefairy, though this all changes when Whitney's Miltank appears, steamrolling the fire type and Totodile thereafter with the first 2 passes of rollout. This puts Ash in a rather dire position, though knowing who has never let him down in times like this, he calls for Primeape, who bursts onto the scene snorting and bellowing for a fight. Nonetheless, Whitney does not seem worried, telling Ash this next rollout will be his 3rd strike, meaning he's out, though to her surprise when Miltank surges forward to crash into Primeape, the Pigmonkey thrusts out both its hands and stops the normal type in its tracks. This comes as a complete shock to the gym leader, who has never seen anything like this before, though that is because she's never battled a Pokemon like Primeape before, as with a grunt, it next hoists the still spinning cow into the air and tosses it back towards its trainer. From the side that escapes Primeape's snout, this is not an easy feat, though it is worth it for the satisfying crash Miltank makes as it hits the ground, having been thrown out of rollout. Briefly, everyone wonders if this is enough to defeat the Milk Cow Pokemon, though it seems Ash won't be so lucky, as on Whitney's cry it gets back to its feet, or rather hooves, which it begins to stamp on the ground. However, as the challengers are about to learn, this is no mere tantrum, as suddenly the battlefield begins to shake, causing pieces of it to crack or sink inwards, creating potholes and cliffs, while Primeape is struck from below by a jagged chunk of foundation. Letting out a pained and enraged screech, the Pigmonkey barrels down the field at its trainer's command, its mittened paws raised for a thrash that will surely take the heifer out, though once more it is surprised to see that it has met its match, as Miltank deftly retaliates with a stomp, albeit one performed as a shoulder barge, that clashes against the fighting type's forearm, forcing a stalemate. Breaking apart, the two fighters give each other acknowledging glances, impressed at how challenging this battle is proving to be, though if anything, this just motivates them to fight harder, as Miltank once again curls up and begins its first rollout run. Figuring this should be no problem, as it has already deflected a usage of this attack that had 3 times the momentum, Ash and Primeape are not worried, though this quickly proves to be a mistake as Whitney reveals her curveball, that the earlier earthquake was not just to hurt Primeape, but to create a ramp through which this attack can deal extra damage. Good to her word, the Milk Cow Pokemon then veers sharply to the side, avoiding Primeape and instead shooting up a steep incline that sends it high into the air. Wisely, Ash tells his friend to dodge, since the recoil from missing this attack may take Miltank out for them, though to his and the Pigmonkey's dismay, no matter how far it runs, Primeape cannot get out from under its opponent's shadow, with it only being a matter of time before the normal type crashes down on top of it, knocking it face first into the dirt. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Miltank starts spinning in place like a tire stuck in sand, with it seemingly trying to grind Primeape's fur off, though in spite of the mounting damage, the fighting type does not give up, and nor does Ash, who a moment later gives a most cunning command, Hyper Beam. Understanding what its trainer has in mind, Primeape lets out a primal shriek as it fires the beam of light directly into the ground. As it had hoped, the force of this is enough to launch the pig monkey into the air, though it is not alone for this voyage, as Miltank, who is still perched atop it, is brought along for the ride, much to it and its trainer's displeasure, as a moment later the roof rushes up to meet them, with Miltank being smashed into it while cushioning the impact for Primeape. Unfortunately, such a daring tactic does come with a cost, as Primeape must now recharge, meaning its battered body has no recourse but to flop down onto the battlefield where it lies limply. Seeing a chance for victory, Whitney tells her partner to drop down onto Primeape while keeping rollout going, something the normal type is happy to do, revving up, then dropping down. Knowing that his friend can't withstand 170 pounds of pure beef slamming into it, Ash desperately cries for Primeape to move out of the way, though it seems the pig monkey is simply incapable of doing so at this point. Nonetheless, Ash does not give up, calling his encouragement even as Miltank draws closer and closer, with this being what gives Primeape hope, and more than that, strength. As with an almighty groan, the piggish pugilist rolls over just in time, causing Miltank to strike packed earth instead. However, even this is not enough to stop the milk cow, with it now using what counts as its third turn of rollout to slam into the prone Primeape less than a foot away and send it soaring into the back wall, where it crashes with an ignoble crunch. Worriedly, Ash asks if his friend is alright, with it coming as a great relief when Primeape gets back to its feet, though it's plain to see one more good hit like that will put it down for the count. Wanting to deliver said good hit, Whitney cheers for Miltank to keep going, and knowing what this means, the normal type races forward, its sights set squarely on the pig monkey. Seeing that their back is quite literally to the wall, and recognizing that this use of rollout will be even stronger than the version Primeape tossed aside at the cost of great exertion, Ash weighs his options carefully, though it's clear he won't have long to strategize, as at that moment Miltank tears past him, leaving very little room between itself and Primeape for the pig monkey to escape through. However, rather than terrify Ash, it inspires him. With a smile crossing his face, he yells for Primeape to use the back wall like a springboard and leap over Miltank. Snorting in appreciation for this clever thinking, Primeape jumps upwards, then channeling a mega kick into its feet, it pushes off from the wall and soars over the top of the speeding cow. Meanwhile, with all the momentum it's built up, not to mention the limited space to maneuver, the bovine Pokemon is sent crashing into the wall with what should be a match-ending collision. Though this is Whitney's Miltank we're talking about, and so with a pained grunt that shows it is not too far from unconsciousness, it pulls itself from the crash site and begins spinning back the way it came for its fifth and final rollout. Without sharing a word, everyone in the gym knows this will be the last clash of the battle, with it all coming down to Ash and what counter he can invent for such speed and power heading Primeape's way. For a moment he considers falling back on Hyper Beam as his old reliable, though after giving his fighting friend a once-over he dismisses this, as it's just as likely the effort would knock Primeape out before Miltank even reached it. That leaves but one option, and only the smallest window through which to carry it out, though Ash has faith that if anyone can bring this plan to fruition, it's Primeape. As a result, the raven-haired boy does not give any orders until Miltank is almost upon the pig monkey. Then, as the window opens, he calls for his closing move, Seismic Toss. Marshalling all its remaining strength, Primeape goes to work, first reaching out to grab the spinning Miltank as it did in their first sortie, and then lifting it above its head. Urgently, Whitney squeals for her friend to break free, but it is already too late, as not only does Miltank lack the stamina for such an escape, but thanks to the speed at which it is spinning, it has provided Primeape with the rotation needed for a seismic toss. As a result, all the fighting type needs to do to finish this move is fall backwards, something it is definitely capable of considering how exhausted it is, with this quickly becoming a devastating suplex as the pair of Pokemon hit the ground. In the aftermath of this, a cloud of dust is blown into the air, though when it settles, only one of the combatants remains able to battle, and that is Primeape, but just barely after all the damage it took. Seeing this, Whitney is not upset, instead congratulating Ash on a well-earned victory. Then, as she steps forward to shake his hand, she bestows him with a plain badge, while at the boy's side, Primeape lets out a gleeful cheer. We pick back up with Ash and friends on the way to Ecruteak City, in the site of Ash's 4th Johto gym battle, though before that can happen, our young hero must first save an old man's life, as out of nowhere he spots a wild Tauros charging towards the oblivious old-timer. Having experienced stopping this species in their tracks, Primeape is the natural choice for this problem, as bursting from its ball, it quite literally takes the bull by the horns, lifting it into the air, and then suplexing it for a decisive knockout. By now the old man has caught on to what is happening, and so watches this display of martial prowess with interest before exhibiting surprising spryness as he walks over and grasps Ash's hand, stating that it looks like he has found his successor at last. Completely baffled by the man's meaning, Ash asks what the old-timer is talking about, and seeing the source of the confusion, he explains that his name is Kenzo, and he's the master or Shihan of a local dojo. Unfortunately, his retirement is drawing near, but he is without an heir to his martial arts legacy, so now he wants Ash and that exceptional Primeape to take his place for the good of his students. Unfortunately, it seems that this is less of a request than it is a demand, as when the boy attempts to explain his own dreams, he is hastily dragged back to the dojo while Brock and Misty trail behind. Here they discover that Kenzo is not quite as bereft of a successor as his words would suggest, as they meet his granddaughter Chigusa, who does not take kindly to the idea of some stranger coming in and stealing her birthright. Having no desire to do so either, Ash questions why she can't take over, though sternly, Kenzo states that she does not respect martial arts, only caring for if a Pokemon's moves look good. A little savagely, the black-haired boy suggests that maybe Kenzo should be a better teacher then, having seen from his Pokemon that very different personalities can learn from each other if they try hard enough. This understandably earns ire from both grandfather and granddaughter alike, who both feel they are completely in the right, though before they can unite over pummeling Ash, a newcomer arrives at the dojo, introducing himself as Shiro, and stating if the other boy won't take on the role of Shihan, he will. Having a bad feeling about this guy, Chigusa agrees to battle him for the title, with the match initially not going in her favour, as his Hitmonlee vastly overpowers her Hitmontop. In a surprise twist, the arrival of Team Rocket therefore comes as something of a blessing, since while Ash and Co do need to fight them off, the toll of the battle prompts Shiro to postpone the rest of his match with Chigusa until tomorrow morning. Having seen the girl's poor performance in the battle so far, Ash suggests that maybe he could mentor her for tomorrow's match, something Chigusa gratefully accepts, with Primeape being picked as the Pokemon to guide Hitmontop. Thanks to its experience as a teacher, this goes better than in canon, with Chigusa and her partner coming to finally understand some of what they weren't seeing before, so when they resume their battle the next morning, they easily prevail. Not only that, but recognizing his granddaughter's growth, Kenzo finally acknowledges her as a worthy candidate to succeed him, albeit with more training, so that as Ash, Brock and Misty leave the dojo, they are confident it has a bright future ahead of it. From here, things resume their canon path for the rest of the journey to Ekritique, with not much of note happening beyond a brief reunion with Gary in which the gang learn his Eevee has evolved into Umbreon, and become much stronger as a result. Nonetheless, due to needing to fix a blackout, the pair do not battle, instead working together and then partying amiably. Following this, the trio at last arrive in Ekritique City, and after learning the gym leader Morty is a ghost-type user, Ash makes the call to bring back Noctowl, though this does mean Primeape will be sent back to the lab in its place. Understanding Ash's desire for a well-rotated team, the pig monkey does not object, accepting the news stoically and taking its place as a reserve for the time being. Fortunately, this does not mean it will be doing nothing during its time away, as with Bulbasaur and Heracross already back at the lab, Primeape has a pair of strong training partners waiting for it, not to mention the 30 Tauros, all of whom are eager to take another shot at their de facto leader. As a result, Primeape has plenty to keep it busy, so that when Ash calls it back several weeks later, it hardly feels as though any time has passed at all. However, this impression will soon be challenged, as when the pig monkey reunites with its friends, it sees one considerable change to the lineup. Chikorita has evolved into a powerful looking Bayleaf, with the Kanto fighter feeling an immense pride for how much its student has developed in his absence. Evidently, the feeling is mutual, as Bayleaf along with Charizard and even Ash himself comment that they can see Primeape's grown a lot since Ekritique as well, which is good news since the boy's gonna need it at its best for what's about to come. As it turns out, the reason Ash has called it back is for a gym battle against Chuck, the leader of the Cianwood Gym and a fighting type specialist, meaning there's no one better than Primeape to help tackle this foe. As this is a 2v2, the piggish pugilist is being paired with Bayleaf, a decision neither Pokemon has any complaint about, with the plan being that Primeape will go first, then if it is defeated or needs a break, Bayleaf will tag it out. Liking the sound of this, Master and student both prepare to battle, something Ash likes to see and tells them as much before proceeding to Chuck's gym, which is designed like an old school martial arts dojo. As planned, Primeape is called out first, with its opponent being a Poliwrath who wastes no time in readying a powerful focus punch the pig monkey only avoids because of its long wind-up time. Nonetheless, Chuck yells at his friend that it did well, with him next commanding it to use Surf so it can zip across the field and shoulder barge its foe for a decent hit. However, this is not enough to keep a fighter like Primeape down, with it paying this blow back in kind a moment later as it slams a mega kick into the tadpole Pokemon's rotund tum so like its trainers. Wincing sympathetically as he clutches his own belly, the gym leader urges Poliwrath to hang tough and to show Primeape the power of their own normal type move, something it does a moment later by striking the pig monkey across the face with Double Slap. Unfortunately for Ash and Primeape, this manages to land 5 times as the fighting type is swatted repeatedly across both cheeks, though more unfortunately for Chuck and Poliwrath, it survives this, as the pain and insult of this attack leaves the pig monkey apoplectic with rage. Capitalizing on this, Ash calls for Thrash, an order the furious furball is all too willing to obey, as it allows its consciousness to be subsumed by rage and a primal shriek to burst from its very core. Then, without mercy or hesitation, it pounces onto Poliwrath, grabbing the water fighting type with its legs, while its fist pound into its opponent's head, quickly leaving it with 2 pulsing black eyes. Urgently, Chuck bellows for his friend to extract itself from the savage beast, something Poliwrath does by blasting Primeape point blank with a hydro pump that carries the force of a fire hose. In the face of this, the pig monkey cannot hold on, though the dowsing is not enough to quell its rage, as the moment it hits the ground, it is on all fours and begins galloping back towards its foe while that mad scream still erupts from it like a battle cry. However, this time it does not attempt to grapple the tadpole Pokemon, instead settling for bowling it over as the pair of Pokemon crash into each other and then go rolling across the floor. Seeing a chance to turn the tables, Chuck orders Poliwrath to get on top of the pig monkey, but unfortunately, this is too great a challenge, as when Primeape feels its foe trying to straddle it, it grabs it by the wrist and casts it back down into the dirt where it can continue to beat on it. By now, Thrash is starting to subside somewhat, and with it Primeape's stamina, giving Poliwrath the chance it needs to crawl away from this creature of nightmares, since honestly it doesn't want to fight anymore, something Chuck understands and can even empathize with after seeing what Primeape has done to his friend. However, even a tired Primeape still has some fight left in it, so that before the water fighter can get very far, it feels a pair of gloved hands close around its ankle before it is seismic tossed into the back wall, where it slumps unconscious. Gulping a little at the ferocity of this fighting type, Chuck is almost hesitant to bring out his Machoke, though having faith in his friend, he lobs its ball into the air and cries for it to show Primeape the power of their teamwork. But to his and Ash's surprise, it is here that the pig monkey makes the gesture that it desires to tap out. Considering the drawback of Thrash, the raven-haired boy sees the logic to this and agrees that his buddy's earned a good rest, though fatigue is not the only reason Primeape wishes to retire, as it also has someone it has faith in, with that being Bayleaf, and not wanting to hog all the good fights when its disciple could be gaining valuable experience against a strong opponent like Chuck, it takes a seat against the back wall so that it can watch the battle to come. In this, Primeape is not disappointed, as the grass type fights admirably in this second match, having 2 benefits she did not in canon. The first is that she is coming into this fight fresh rather than needing to have beaten Poliwrath beforehand, and the second is that she has all the teachings of her mentor to guide her. Not to mention, with both the pig monkey and Ash watching, she has 2 reasons not to disappoint. As a result, she puts her all into the battle, with this allowing her to score a decisive victory while showing off her powerful body slam, much to Ash and Primeape's delight, as all 3 of them gather onto the field to celebrate their victory and the acquisition of the Storm Badge. In the wake of this battle, Ash decides to keep Primeape around for a while longer, so that it accompanies him and the others to the Whirl Islands where Totodile and Kingler get their time to shine in the World Cup, before reuniting with Richie to help protect a baby Lugia named Silver from Team Rocket. Following this, it is time to return to Olivine City for Ash's 6th gym battle, this time against the Steel Specialist Jasmine. While Primeape does not partake in this particular battle, its influence is felt indirectly, as thanks to its rivalry with Bayleaf along with its training under Charizard, both of which are a result of Primeape's presence, Cyndaquil has enough strength and experience to not only solo this gym battle, but also evolve into Quilava in the process, so that it does not fall too far behind its rival. This is not the only change to occur around this time though, as up next would normally be the episode Bulbasaur the Ambassador, in which the grass poison type would leave the team to reside at Oak's lab full time, but thanks to it already being there and the lab Pokemon having been whipped into shape by Drill Sergeant Primeape during the Orange Islands arc, this does not need to be a permanent departure. Not long after this is the episode Extreme Pokemon, in which Ash and Gary face off in the Extreme Pokemon race. Unfortunately, this time the change is not a positive one for Ash, as due to their tired Oak's lab, Gary has become much more focused on his training rather than relying on natural talent, with this allowing him and Arcanine to win the race in Fanpy's egg. Naturally, Ash is disappointed to lose, though this just reignites his desire to finally surpass his longtime rival, since now the score is 1 tie and 1 win to Gary. Beyond this, there isn't much that Primeape changes for the next little while, beyond occasionally helping in skirmishes with Team Rocket and training alongside its friends, though this all changes when the group get close to Mahogany Town, as around this time they come across a Tyrogue wearing a neckerchief. Figuring it must have gotten separated from its trainer, Brock offers it some food, though to his and everyone's shock, the little Fink not only takes the food, but also commands a Mankey and Primeape to steal even more from the group. Naturally, Ash responds by bringing out his own Primeape, who makes short work of the thieving trio, though when the question arises of what to do with them, a young man in a muscle shirt and karate pants rushes up and profusely apologizes, explaining that Tyrogue's been in a bad headspace ever since its trainer abandoned abandoned it, though in spite of that, he considers it a friend and refuses to give up on it. Coolly, Misty states that he should keep a better eye on his friends then, with the young man, who it turns out is named Kyo, agreeing. In fact, he's been following it in the hope that it might join his team, since his dream is to enter the P1 Grand Prix, and he would love to do so with Tyrogue as his partner. At once, Ash and Primeape share a look as they remember their own victory in the last Grand Prix, and how it brought them together as friends, with Kyo connecting the dots a moment later and imploring them for a battle, since it would be a huge honor to face off against a pair of champs. Grinning eagerly, Ash and Primeape both accept, though one among them who is not grinning is Tyrogue, as having gotten back up from its walloping, it now glares angrily at the pig monkey and barks out a challenge. Helpfully, Kyo explains that part of Tyrogue's trauma centers around a hatred of Pokemon larger than it, though wisely, Brock suggested if that's the case, it and Kyo should battle together, since they both want to face Ash and Primeape. While Tyrogue does agree to this, things do not go smoothly at first, with it refusing to listen to its human partner at all. Unsurprisingly, this puts it at a disadvantage against the renowned teamwork of Ash and Primeape, who subsequently wail on it. Nonetheless, the Scuffle Pokemon does not give up, and neither does Kyo, who keeps trying to reach Tyrogue. As part of this, he continues issuing commands and advice, which the little fighting type eventually realizes is sound, and so slowly begins to listen. Through this, the pair discover that they have good synergy, even giving Ash and Primeape a challenge, and while the Cantonian pair do emerge victorious in the end, both Kyo and Tyrogue recognize they have formed a bond and make a good team. As a result, when the martial artist offers Tyrogue and its friends Mankey and Primeape a place on his squad, they agree, with Kyo promising that once they become P1 champions too, they'll find Ash and Primeape and battle them again. Getting back on the road, Ash and Co maintain their canon path for the next few episodes, with this bringing them to Mahogany Town, and to Ash's penultimate Johto gym battle. In the lead up to this, he meets Price the gym leader, who was initially cold and distant towards his Pokemon due to his beloved Piloswine seemingly abandoning him years before. However, during an adventure together, the pair learned that it was actually frozen in ice during a blizzard long ago, with Charizard, Quilava, and Pikachu reviving it. This in turn allows Price to open his heart once again, with the old man welcoming Ash to challenge him for a badge whenever he wants. Ash being Ash, he is eager to take Price up on this offer, though before he does, he announces his intent to send Primeape to the lab once again and bring Heracross back in its place. Since while the pig monkey is super effective against ice types, he wants to give his newer fighting type a chance to gain some real experience, since this will be its first chance to take on a gym. Seeing the logic in this, Primeape does as its bid, while Heracross and Quilava take on Price's Ice Squad, with Quilava beating Dugong like in canon, while Heracross takes Pikachu's place against Piloswine. Due to the aforementioned super effectiveness of fighting types against ice types, and the training Heracross has had with both Primeape and Charizard, as well as on its own, its gym debut is a resounding success, with it having no trouble going toe-to-toe with Price's ace. Though in the end it is denied its chance at a KO, as when Piloswine gets exhausted from the vigorous battling, the ice specialist chooses to forfeit rather than see his old friend hurt needlessly. As a result, Ash is bestowed with his Glacier badge, meaning his last stop before the Silver Conference is Blackthorn City. Meanwhile, back at the lab, Primeape continues its own training, with this occupying its time, though it along with Ash's other reserves do occasionally receive updates on their trainer's progress from Oak and Tracy, such as when Ash reaches Blackthorn and makes the acquaintance of the Kanto and Johto champion Lance. Unfortunately, they don't get to battle, though Ash does at least get a match with his cousin Claire, who is also the gym leader and a Dragon-type user. For this battle, he chooses to recall Snorlax, with this evidently being a good choice, as it along with Pikachu and Charizard wind up defeating Claire and earning Ash his 8th and final Johto gym badge. While Primeape does wish it could have had a crack at Claire's team to make up for its loss to Drake's Dragonite, it is still happy for its rival and other teammates, with this only compounding when another connection to their Orange Island adventures re-enters Ash's life. While visiting a marine Pokemon laboratory to receive a Pokemon egg for Professor Elm, Ash, Brock, and Misty are informed that a pod of Lapras have surfaced off the coast, with the trio being eager to see for themselves. To their surprise, they spot Ash's Lapras among the group, with the boy eagerly rushing out to hug his old friend, while Misty agrees that it's good to see it. However, the happiest of all of them is Charizard, as when Ash brings it out, it roars with delight and flies above its first student while bellowing praise for how big and strong it's gotten in their time apart. Ever the affectionate one, Lapras nuzzles its head against Charizard's stomach when it flies close, as if to say that it could not have gotten to where it is without the flame Pokemon, and so will be forever grateful, to which the fiery lizard lets loose a torrent of flame. Meanwhile, Ash also uses this chance to introduce his newer teammates to the transport Pokemon, with Quilava in particular showing interest in the water type due to both being Charizard's apprentices, with this allowing them to develop a fast friendship, especially since beneath the more stoic nature of Quilava still resides the sweet innocence and curiosity of Cyndaquil that it has in common with Lapras. Unfortunately, this reunion is only a temporary one, as the pod is set to depart that afternoon, making it serendipitous that Ash encountered them at all, though before they can go, Team Rocket do make one dastardly attempt to abduct the water types. Thankfully, Charizard is there to stop this, as leading its two students into battle, they manage to drive the crooks off in no time flat, with Lapras in turn being recognized as the pod's new leader for its heroism. When Primeape hears this story during one of Ash's phone calls back home, he is happy Charizard got a chance to see Lapras again, just as it is pleased to hear that Ash has helped transport a young Larvitar to a preserve on Mount Silver, which means he must be getting pretty close to the Johto League. As it turns out, this suspicion proves correct, as a few days later Tracy approaches it in the corral with its ball in hand and the news it's been waiting for, that Ash is calling it back to the main team, since he needs it right away for his next Silver Conference battle. As it turns out, the battle Primeape has been summoned back for is Ash's top 48 match against Macy, as part of the round robin to determine who will advance to the victory tournament. During his preparation for this battle, Ash had discovered that his opponent's ace in the hole is an Electabuzz with remarkable physical strength, and who she often uses to dispatch the water types other trainers tend to use against her and her fire team. As a result, Ash decided to bring back one of his own bruisers, and one who he knows can take a hit, so that when Macy calls out her Electabuzz as the second Pokemon in their 3v3 following Turdale dealing some serious damage to her Slugma, Ash is ready to counter, swapping in Primeape. This takes the girl by surprise, though all the same short is the electric Pokemon to charge the Pigmonkey and use a volley of Thunder Punches, something Ash matches by telling Primeape to go blow for blow with Mega Kicks. At once sparks begin flying as the flurry of fists and feet collide in the center of the battlefield, though ultimately this clash must end, and when it does so in Primeape's favor, as the fighting type pushes its foe back, then on Ash's cry pounces on it and beats it into submission, giving the first knockout of the battle to them. Undeterred, Macy's next move is to go back to Slugma, figuring Primeape won't be able to punch and kick hot lava, and while this is true, there is one thing she failed to account for. Slugma is so atrociously slow that all the Pigmonkey needs to do is hang back and charge up a Hyper Beam that the fire type can either dodge due to its aforementioned slowness, or endure to its almost equally poor special defense, meaning this clash ends 2-0 in Ash and Primeape's favor. For our final Pokemon, Macy picks her Quilava, and while Ash could leave Primeape in and try and go for the sweep, he also recognizes that Totodile was denied its moment in the sun by the girl's previous switch to Electabuzz. As a result, he chooses to let it have a crack at the middle stage starter, with this faith being rewarded, as due to being familiar with the species thanks to having one in the party, Totodile is able to tank Quilava's flame wheels and hit back with several super effective water guns, dousing the weasel and eventually taking it out so that Squirtle's assistance is not required in the end. Following this is Ash's battle with Jackson, which Primeape does not partake in, though which does give Bulbasaur a chance to shine, as for the most part this goes like canon up until the final exchange between it and Meganium, as due to having had consistent training partners and not having needed to neglect its training back at Oak's lab to play Mediator all the time, it is able to come out on top during the Solar Beam vs Solar Beam clash, meaning Ash is the definitive winner of Group H, advancing him to the victory tournament. However, this joyous news also comes with a surprise, that Ash's top 16 opponent will be none other than Gary, a prospect that excites the boy to no end, as finally he'll get the chance to even the score. In a slightly teasing way, Misty states that she can probably already name every Pokemon he intends to use, rattling off names like Charizard, Primeape, and Tauros, though here Ash surprises her by stating that he's not going to use any of those three. Instead, he'll be using Pikachu and the friends he's made here in Johto, since he believes they have what it takes after all the effort they've put in during this journey, not to mention it would stand contrary to his philosophy if he kept falling back on the same few Pokemon rather than rotating his team and letting them all grow and shine. So it's time for Primeape and Charizard's proteges to step up, and to see if the lessons they have imparted to the whole team during their tenure as leaders has stuck. Though Brock and Misty both think this is a risky play, they respect the reasoning and maturity behind the decision, and so offer to help with some last-minute sparring before the final battle in 2 days' time. As a result, when the match rolls around, Ash feels more ready than ever to face his lifelong rival, with Gary evidently feeling the same as he gives Ashy Boy a smirk and asks if he's ready to lose again. Confidently, Ash replies that isn't going to happen, with his stony determination being matched by the rocky battlefield that emerges between them, signifying that it's time for the long overdue battle to begin. For his first Pokemon, Gary goes with Nidoqueen, while in turn Ash picks Bayleaf, with the young oak smirking that obviously his rival isn't brushed up on type matchups lately, since he's got bad news for him if he was planning to use Bayleaf's grass typing to get an easy win over his ground type, as Nidoqueen is also part poison type, neutralizing that weakness. However, this news doesn't seem to phase Ash, who instead has Bayleaf show off her guts by running headlong into the bigger Pokemon for a body slam. Such an audacious move is enough to catch both Gary and the Drill Pokemon off guard, with this putting the pair on the back foot as they work to regain the momentum of the battle. In an attempt to do this, they show off a variety of physical moves such as Mega Punch, Strength, and Double Kick. Though having already faced such techniques during her many spars with Primeape, Bayleaf is well prepared to handle this, taking the blows and then responding with the unyielding tenacity her mentor had worked to encourage, so that before long she claims the first victory of the battle in a very Primeape-esque manner. Nonetheless, when Gary next calls out Magmar, Ash wisely swaps in Noctowl, with the shiny bird putting its sonic powers to good use, sending the fire type to Dreamland and then repeatedly dive bombing it in an attempt to take it out before it can wake up. Unfortunately, here luck is not on the avian's side, as after only 3 of these attacks Magmar awakens, and feeling fired up from its nap, it decides to share some of those flames with its foe, letting out a devastating fire blast that downs the normal type and allows a couple of well-placed fire punches to end things. However, this is not to say that Noctowl's contribution was insignificant, as building on the damage it caused, Turdale is able to come out and finish the job with a well-placed water gun that sends the Spitfire Pokemon crashing through several rocks, before coming to lie in a heap at Gary's feet. For his third Pokemon, the young oak chooses his Scizor, with this seeing Ash switch again, this time calling forth Heracross, while in the spectators area, Misty leans over to Brock and whispers that Ash is playing this battle really cautiously. Nodding, the Pewter Gym Leader states that from what he can tell, while Ash is confident that his Johto team have the strength and ability to win, he isn't overconfident, since after failing to surpass the other Pallet Town native twice now, he wants to make sure he does everything just right so that he isn't the cause of their defeat. To that end, he believes Ash is trying to emulate the best bits of Gary's strategy and apply it to his own creative battling style. Having not considered it that way, Misty sounds impressed as she cheers her companion on, while back on the field, Ash's Heracross draws on its experience fighting Shingo's Scizor to claim what should be a straightforward win. Unfortunately, this is a miscalculation, as Gary is a far more formidable foe than the computer-loving boy, with his Scizor having superior speed and strength, as it is able to zip all over the battlefield while battering the fighting bug at close and long range with Metal Claws, Swifts, and Steel Wings. Subsequently, Heracross falls, though none can deny that it fought bravely to the last, while in its place, Quilava steps up, with the Volcano Pokemon immediately setting to work going toe-to-toe with Scizor. Specifically, it does this by matching Swifts with Flamethrowers and Steel Wings and Metal Claws with Flame Wheels, so that each time the two Pokemon clash, the quad-weak Steel Bug comes away the worse for wear. In contrast, every exchange only builds Quilava's confidence and goes on to highlight how far it's come from the shy, sleepy Cyndaquil it once was, as it continues facing off against its foe without fear. Then, when it finally triumphs, driving Scizor into the dirt with a leaping Flame Wheel, it raises its head high and breathes a mighty flamethrower into the air, momentarily taking on the shadow of Charizard. With this, halftime is called, seeing Ash briefly return to Brock and Misty, with the pair praising his performance since he's in the lead. Nonetheless, Ash isn't ready to celebrate just yet, a fierce passion in his eyes as he reiterates that he really wants to beat Gary. Smiling confidently, his friends assure him that if he keeps battling like this, he will. Then when the referee summons him and his rival back, the two boys from Pallet Town resume their battle. To Ash's surprise, here Gary reveals that he actually has a stronger fire type than Magmar, with this being his Arcanine. From a glance, the Raven-haired youth can tell that the brunette isn't lying, and so making the prudent call, he brings Totodile back, trusting that it's rested enough to score another win. While it is rested, it unfortunately lacks the power, as even with typing working against it, Gary's Arcanine is exceptionally well raised, flambeing the bitey Croc and evening up the score. Luckily, Ash is not without options, as when Quilava retakes the field, things quickly heat up as the two Pokemon begin trading Flame Wheels and Flamethrowers. At first, this seems to favour Arcanine as the physically larger of the pair, though channeling Charizard once more through its indomitable will and refuse to lose, Quilava continues to push, forcing the legendary Pokemon into a stalemate that ultimately claims them both and ends this bout in a tie. As a result, both boys are left with two Pokemon each, though while Gary's pair haven't battled yet, one of Ash's have, putting him at something of a disadvantage. Fortunately, this is mitigated somewhat by Gary's next choice, with that being Golem, so when Ash brings Bayleaf back onto the field, it is with the knowledge that her grass moves are quite effective. Having this same knowledge, Gary decides to borrow a bit from Ash's playbook here, reasoning the best defense is a good offense, as if he can knock Bayleaf out quickly, then all Ashy Boy has left is Pikachu, whose Golem can easily flatten while the mouse's electric attacks bounce right off it. To this end, he holds nothing back, having the Megaton Pokemon drop a magnitude right off the bat. Then, while Bayleef's footing is unstable, Golem strikes, curling up in a ball and rolling into the grass type who topples like a bowling pin. However, this is not the strike Gary had hoped for, as Bayleef gets back up, forcing his rock ground type to make a second pass at rollout, though unfortunately, this one will be far less successful, as when Golem draws near, the leaf Pokemon extends her vines into the ground, using them like a pole vault to bound over the top of its foe's rolling form, while Golem itself is sent crashing into a chunk of rock. Due to not having anticipated such a hard and sudden stop, this leaves the Rock Turtle dazed, with Ash capitalizing on this to have Bayleef go on the attack, firing a volley of Razor Leaves into Golem's face that render it unable to battle. Now it is Gary who is left with only his starter in a disadvantageous matchup, though refusing to even entertain the notion that Ash might beat him, and with only 5 Pokemon to boot, the young oak brings out his Blastoise, and has it use Skull Bash, with the result being a devastating one-hit KO as the sea turtle retreats into its shell, then bursts out with explosive force. Nonetheless, Ash has nothing but praise for Bayleef as he recalls her. While having waited patiently for his turn, Pikachu bounds out onto the field, his cheeks crackling in anticipation for what is to come. Whipping his hair cockily, Gary smirks that he supposes this is Ashy Boy's idea of a strategy, a battle of starters since the types favor him. Though shaking his head, Ash replies that that isn't why he wanted this. He just thinks that both of them using their very first Pokemon that they got from Professor Oak is the perfect way to put their rivalry to bed once and for all. Evidently intent on seeing it end in his favor, Ash then takes the first move, having Pikachu open with Thunderbolt, though unfortunately this is next to useless when Blastoise retreats into its shell, insulating itself from the attack, and then springing out for another Skull Bash. Having not expected such a speedy riposte, Ash and Pikachu are both caught off guard, with the spunky electric rodent paying the price as he is sent crashing through a stone outcropping. Were that not bad enough, Blastoise then follows up with a Hydro Pump that strikes head-on, and sends Pikachu skittering across the battlefield, with Brock and Misty both wincing as they begin to worry that maybe Ash's plan to face Gary's starter with his own wasn't such a good idea after all. However, one person who seems undeterred is Ash himself, so when he calls out to ask if his buddy is okay, Pikachu squeaks in the affirmative then gets back up, with this spelling the next stage of the battle, as with electric attacks proving unsuccessful, the plucky duo next try to get physical, using a combo of agility and quick attack to slam into the tanky water type from multiple angles by jumping from rock to rock. Unfortunately, this too is largely negated by Blastoise's shell, as while it does still feel the impact, the thick carapace goes a long way to dampen the blow, meaning it'll take a long time to do any serious damage. And time is something that Ash and Pikachu do not have, as during one of their many attempts to batter the shellfish Pokemon into submission, Gary has his partner strike back, retreating into its shell and using Rapid Spin to rebuff the electric type while also throwing off its rhythm, allowing Blastoise to fire off another torrential Hydro Pump that strikes true on its smaller foe. From the looks of things, Pikachu cannot afford to take another powerful hit like that, with this putting a smile on Gary's face as he orders his friend to finish things with Skull Bash, though this is exactly what Ash had been banking on, as he yells for Pikachu to use Quick Attack and aim for Blastoise's head hole. This bizarre command comes as such a shock to Gary that he doesn't even have time to react, instead watching as Pikachu shoots forward and lodges himself up to his waist in Blastoise's shell. Smirking, the brunette then taunts that it looks like Ashy Boy's plan has failed, since that didn't do any damage, and it won't even stop his starter's attack, as now Pikachu is stuck, making it an easy target. Though, here it is Ash's turn to grin, as he retorts the same could be said of Blastoise, before calling for a Thunder. At once, Gary understands, though it is too late to stop it, as when electricity bursts from the little yellow rodent, it completely bypasses its rival's shell, striking directly at Blastoise for massive damage. Though this is not the full extent of things, as Gary soon discovers that Pikachu has done more than just get around the shell, he's weaponized it, as now it is responsible for keeping the electricity in, so that it does continual damage, with it therefore coming as little shock when Blastoise's head emerges shortly after with spirals for eyes, ending the battle and eliminating Gary from the tournament. In the wake of this, the young oak is speechless, having never imagined it could end like this. Though when Ash smiles over at him and calls that one of the best battles he's ever had, the brunette agrees, striding forward and shaking his rival's hand, having finally accepted him as an equal, and perhaps even a friend now that this pointless feud has been put to bed at last. With this newfound sense of closure, Ash advances to the top 8, where he sees that he'll be facing Harrison. Unfortunately, not everything is good news, as after the intense battle they had today, none of the Pokemon Ash used will be in any state to partake in tomorrow's match, with even Pikachu being too spent to do anything more than cheer his trainer on from Misty's lap. All the same, Ash is not too upset, since this is where his rotation strategy shines, as he reveals to his friends that he intends to use a team made up entirely out of Kanto Pokemon tomorrow, due to Harrison having not visited that region yet. As a result, he hopes that the other boys' unfamiliarity with Pokemon from his homeland will help mitigate the advantage Harrison has by using Hoenn Pokemon that he, Ash, has never seen before. To this end, when the pair of rivals wind up facing off the following morning, Harrison chooses to open the match with Kecleon, while Ash goes with Bulbasaur, trusting his old friend will feel quite at home on the grass battlefield they've been assigned. Like in canon, Harrison has Kecleon try and hide in the grass, but here Ash is one step ahead of him, having Bulbasaur cut it down with Razor Leaf, significantly limiting the color swap Pokemon's camouflage. Unfortunately, this does not mean it is an open and shut victory for Ash, as due to being mostly invisible, Kecleon is still able to get the early lead, zipping around the battlefield and lashing Bulbasaur with its tongue. Though eventually Ash catches sight of the one part of itself that Kecleon cannot camouflage, and so as Bulbasaur wraps its vines around the red stripe, holding the Hoennian Pokemon in place and leaving it vulnerable to a Soul Beam that takes it out, giving the first win to Ash. Following this, Harrison chooses a Pokemon Ash has met before, his Sneasel, with the speedy Dark type making use of the now shorter grass to dash around the field while deploying a series of hit-and-run slashes and Metal Claws. Like with Kecleon, Ash tries to tie the Sharp Claw Pokemon down, figuring this will allow Bulbasaur to finish it off. However, this is easier said than done, as with its impressive agility, Sneasel simply avoids any Vine Whip sent its way, while similarly slicing any Razor Leaves to ribbons. As a result, it is not long before Bulbasaur succumbs to its proverbial death by 1,000 cuts, evening the match back up at 1 loss apiece. Seeing there needs a new strategy, Ash's second Pokemon is his Muck, with this proving clever, as when Sneasel attempts to do the same it did to Bulbasaur, it quickly finds its claws getting stuck in the thick ooze that makes up the poison type's body. Though, there's not all that is caught there, as mistaking Sneasel putting its 2 claws into it for a hug, Muck attempts to return the favor, affectionately smothering the Dark Ice type, and putting it down for the count. Happy to have regained his lead, Ash lets out a cheer, praising Muck for its awesome power, though unfortunately, here is where things start to go awry for the young son of Pallet, as Harrison reveals his third Pokemon to be Hypno. This throws something of a spanner in the works of Ash's Kanto team's strategy, since while Harrison hasn't been to the region and therefore hasn't seen every Kanto Pokemon, he has seen his fair share thanks to it and Johto sharing a landmass, meaning Harrison still holds the advantage of using Pokemon his opponent doesn't know. Nonetheless, Ash still presses on valiantly, telling Muck to rain Sludge Bombs down on Hypno, though here the Hypnosis Pokemon blocks this with Psychic, freezing the globs of goo in midair, then throwing them back at the Poison type for some decent damage. Were that not bad enough, Hypno then uses Hypnosis to put Muck to sleep, leaving it exposed and vulnerable for a second super effective Psychic attack, with this knocking it out and forcing Ash to pick his third Pokemon. As it turns out, this is Snorlax, with the battle that follows mirroring canon, as when Harrison sees that Snorlax is already asleep, he has Hypno use Dream Eater, though rather than take out the defenseless normal type, this causes it to wake up and choose violence, with it firing a Hyper Beam that defeats the Hypnosis Pokemon in one blow. With this, intermission is called, allowing Ash and Harrison to take a short break before coming back fresh and ready to continue showing off their very best. Wanting to start the second half strong considering he's a Pokemon down, Harrison brings forth his Houndoom, since he's one of his main partners, having been seen frequently walking by his side. Understanding what a powerful Pokemon his rival has chosen, Ash decides to likewise go big, picking Kingler, with this being a smart matchup, as its prodigious power may be needed to contend with the Dark Pokemon's might. Even still, this is a tough battle, as Houndoom is a speedy ranged fighter, while Kingler prefers to get up close and personal, though this is not the only difficulty Ash faces, as when he has his water friend attempt to match the Devil Dog by fighting at range, Harrison already has a counter in place, with Flamethrower easily evaporating Bubble, and the literal move Counter being used to fire Kingler's Hyper Beam right back at it for double damage. As a result, it is something of a minor miracle that King Crab does not go down then and there, though showing remarkable fortitude, the Pinsir Pokemon stands strong, biding its time, and waiting until Harrison orders a headbutt to finish things off. This at last frees Ash up to land a devastating Crab Hammer, which renders Houndoom unable to battle, though unfortunately after the beating it's taken, Headbutt does the same for it, ending this battle in a tie. For their next bout, Ash goes with Snorlax while Harrison picks Steelix, resulting in another repeat of canon, as while Steelix manages to bind its pudgy foe, this just leaves it at close enough range to be staggered by an angry Ice Punch, and then taken out by a Hyper Beam, leaving Harrison with just one Pokemon. However, this Pokemon is his ace and starter Blaziken, with a Fire type quickly establishing itself as a true monster, since one Blaze kick from it is able to knock Snorlax out cold, sending a shiver down Ash's spine. Figuring now is the time to fight fire with fire, Ash's penultimate pick is Charizard, with the Flame Pokemon attempting to show the truth behind its classification with a full power Flamethrower, though here things do not go quite as planned, as making use of its powerful legs, the Fire Chicken is able to leap high enough into the air that it might as well be flying. Nonetheless, Ash does not give up, ordering a volley of Dragon Rages, and when this does not work, he has Charizard take to the air just as Blaziken lands, before both starters put their all into their flamethrower for a clash that none watching are likely to forget. However, in the end, the pair prove perfectly matched when it comes to their flames, and so quickly shift to hand-to-hand combat, with Charizard's tail being used to swipe at Blaziken, while the Hoennian's flaming fists find purchase in the big lizard's jaw. Subsequently, both feel themselves fatiguing, though recognizing that their prides are on the line, they refuse to stop, with it falling to their trainers to break the deadlock, as Ash calls for a seismic toss, hoping to end things here and now. Unfortunately, once more Harrison is able to meet this, using Flamethrower to soften the landing, so this is not the finishing blow Ash had hoped for, forcing the young Cantonian to reassess his strategy. However, here it is Charizard who proposes the new battle plan. As letting out a faint roar, it thrusts a claw into its chest, wordlessly requesting Ash to trust it and let it go all out in one final head-to-head clash with Blaziken. Having total faith in his old friend, Ash nods, with this being all Charizard needs, as it bursts forward and begins trading blows with its fellow fire starter once again. Truthfully, Harrison is not sure why Ash is allowing this, since this sort of hand-to-hand combat favors Blaziken more than Charizard, though the reason is quite simple. Charizard knows that it isn't going to win, but what it can do is deal as much damage as possible to the Blaze Pokemon, so that the one who takes its place can finish the job. Gone is the vainglorious fighter who only cared for its own power, as having learned to place its trust in its friends thanks to Ash, Primeape, Lapras, and Quilava, it gives the last of its strength and its will to them, dealing a final point-blank Dragon Rage, and then falling on its own terms. This just leaves one Pokemon for Ash to call on, and unsurprisingly, it is Primeape, with the pig monkey picking up the torch its friend and rival had carried up until this point, and using it to set its heart ablaze, it glares fiercely at Blaziken. While the foreign starters' battle with Charizard had been for their pride as fire types, this match will be for their honor as fighting types, with a pair of Pokemon recognizing this immediately, and rushing one another when the call is given. Like the end of the last match, this one begins with fisticuffs, or rather, feety-cuffs, as both Pokemon utilize their powerful legs as Mega Kick clashes with Blaze Kick. However, where before Blaziken had the advantage due to being part fire type, here being dual typed is a disadvantage, as it is only half a fighter, while Primeape is nothing but, putting out the flames of its kick with the sheer air pressure of their collision, and then leaping atop it as it begins to thrash. Now at last the Blaze Pokemon begins to show signs of fear, as when Primeape starts mauling its face, it is forced to use Quick Attack to retreat, as Harrison yells for it to watch out. Unfortunately for the pair, now that the pig monkey has entered its frenzy, it isn't going to stop, letting out a manic shriek as it barrels down the pitch towards its foe. Desperately, Harrison tells Blaziken to jump up, with this buying them some time, as there is little Primeape can do to get airborne, though what goes up must come down, with Ash feeling confident that when Blaziken does, he can win this. Having a similar fear, the fiery chicken puts everything it has into one last flying kick, though to hit its trainer's surprise, Primeape does not leap up to clash with this, instead grabbing it on Ash's command. Then more terrifyingly, it begins to spin, winding up for a seismic toss. After the fight with Charizard, Blaziken simply does not have enough energy to soften the blow with another flamethrower, so that as its furry foe lets go and it strikes the back wall, it slumps into unconsciousness, ending the match and giving Ash his first ever top 8 win in a Pokemon League. Naturally, the boy is over the moon, rushing onto the field to hug Primeape, while just as happily the pig monkey burbles its delight at this outcome. Meanwhile, across the field from them, Harrison gives his congratulations, while Blaziken gives the Cantonian duo a stoic but respectful nod. With this, Ash is now slated to battle John Dixon in the semi-finals, though unfortunately, this is where his league run ends, as due to having now exhausted all his heavy hitters, not to mention the fact that John canonically goes on to win the entire Silver Conference, I believe it is likely that Ash would fall to him just as Harrison did, though not before putting up one hell of a fight. Knowing wholeheartedly that he and his team did their best, and there is still more to learn and more adventures to be had, such as Harrison suggesting that Ash try his hand at the Hoenn League, the Ravenhead boy is able to walk away with his head held high. Not only that, but having gotten a lot further than he did in the Indigo League, Ash is certain that he is on the right path with his rotation strategy, as by allowing his old friends to mentor his new ones, as well as form friendships and rivalries of their own, the team as a whole grows stronger. As a result, there is one key difference in his plans as he prepares to set off for Hoenn. He will not be starting all over again, but instead bringing trusted friends like Primeape, Charizard, and many others along for the ride. And that's where we'll leave this story, since at this point it begins to veer very closely into another story I am already covering. What if Ash used his old Pokemon? If you would like to see how an Ash who knows the importance of using his full roster would go in Hoenn and beyond, I recommend checking out that story. Though in the meantime, thank you so much for watching What If Ash Kept Primeape. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you as the journey continues.